All set? Excellent. Well, hello, everybody. My name is Carrie Keenan. Jessica Chait and I are co-chairs of this committee, which usually meets monthly. This is our July, am I right, meeting? What month is it? As per the governor's orders extended, we will be meeting remotely. This meeting is being recorded and is currently live streaming on YouTube. It will be accessible at a later date. The agenda for tonight is public and can be viewed on the Community Board 4 website. We encourage you to sign up for eBlast and to get the agenda. If this is your first time at a Community Board 4 meeting, there are 3 things to know about the process. Number 1, after each presentation, first the committee will ask questions to the presenter. Then members of the public attendees can ask questions or make a comment, and subsequently the discussion goes back to the committee. Number 2, on some agenda items, committee members may next vote to make a recommendation, which usually results in a letter for the full board to vote on. And number 3, if you want to comment or ask a question after a presentation and after the committee has spoken, you must press the raised hand button on your screen, usually on the bottom right. If you're calling in, use *9 to raise your hand and *6 to unmute. If you have any questions regarding what I just shared, please raise your hand now. 1 second, I'm just looking to see if anyone's hand is raised. And I don't see any. So thanks everybody for coming. Maybe since we are not a ton of people tonight, everybody from the board can just say a quick hello. Betty?
Hi, Betty McIntosh, committee member.
Pamela?
Hi, Pamela Wolf, public member, Chelsea Land Use, CB4.
Mike?
Mike Noble, member. Handing it off to Vera.
Thanks.
Vera, are you with us?
Oh, yes, Viren Bramford, CB4, CMU County.
Kit?
Hi, everybody. Kit Tollerson, and I am traveling for work, which is why there is a stale hotel background behind me.
Now I've forgotten where I was. Tina?
Hi, Tina, member for a while.
Peggy? Well, okay, Peggy Co is here. She's got a lot going on at home, so she's just listening in. I'll say hello for her. Thanks, Peggy. And Pamela?
I think I already spoke.
Oh, sorry. And Jessica?
I'm happy to do it again.
Sure.
Good evening, everyone. Jessica Chait, co-chair of Chelsea Land Use.
Did I get everybody? We have to get better at popcorn, it's called. You pass it off to the next person. Well, we have a very busy agenda tonight. We have 4 items. And the first item is a ULURP from the FDNY on 29th Street EMS station number 7, 613 West 29th Street. And Jessica is going to take this one.
Great. I also just want to acknowledge, I understand Yadira Jimenez is a new CB4 member and is in our attendees section. So Yadira, we're thrilled to have you listening in for tonight's discussion. So we are, for those who have been involved with the board for a long time, you are probably very well familiar with this topic for tonight, which is the FDNY to present on a ULURP for West 29th Street EMS station number 7 to the location at 613 West 29th Street. If you have had a chance to read through the Dropbox, in particular, the summary of the proposal, I think it was very comprehensive, as are the many letters which have been written on this to date. But to summarize, because it is maybe a new topic for several folks, I wanted to just note that this is being discussed today primarily because this is in reference to the relocation of the EMS station, which is currently on 23rd Street. It was moved there following the closure of St. Vincent's Hospital in 2010. And as you may have seen in the Dropbox and correspondence dating all the way back to 2012, we have requested that the fire department emergency medical service EMS Station 7, which is at 512 West 23rd Street under Highline Park, be moved, primarily because this unenclosed facility is unsuitable. The language that we've used is unsuitable for a residential block with noise from sirens and exhaust from idling vehicles disturbing nearby residents. Due to the location at 23rd Street, substantial improvements were not feasible. And so the board has been working together with the FDNY, with DCAS, with developers across our district to find a more suitable location for this EMS station. It seems that going back to even, I think 2015, we have been speaking specifically about this site at 29th Street, and we have been very vocal trying to move the city forward in and with DCAS in particular, and making this property at 29th Street appropriate for use by EMS. So again, there are lots of letters reflecting this, but you should know, I'm sure Betty was very involved with this, perhaps Paul. I know Joe Restuccia is an encyclopedia on this and was able to share some really helpful background, which effectively says like this progress is exactly what we have been asking for. Now, of course, we have the opportunity now to see site plans and ask questions and hear, or hear from them and raise any continued concerns. But on the whole, this is an outcome that we have worked towards and wanted to see. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to, I think we have David Harney from FDNY. We have Steve Charno from Douglaston, and I believe we have Laura Ringelheim, from DCAS. So I'll turn it over to you all, and David, I think you'll lead this presentation, and look forward to everyone's comments and questions to follow. So David, that's to you. You're on mute. Can you not hear us? We don't hear you. Jesse, I don't know if we can unmute him from our side.
I can't unmute him. David has to unmute himself.
Okay.
Look for the little microphone in the lower left corner of your screen.
Just hover down that way, David, and you'll see it.
I'm going to send you and David the phone login as well. So if he can't get off of mute, he can call in through his phone. Okay.
Thanks, Jesse.
Okay.
David, if you just put your cursor down in the lower left-hand corner, you'll see the little microphone pop up and you click on it.
I think David can't hear us.
Yeah, I think that's right, Darren. Well, appreciate everyone's patience. Do want to just, I'll use this opportunity to share a few other facts that I was going to wait till afterwards, but wanted to note that the way that the previous ULURP was designed, that this 3-story building is the max amount of development that can happen on this site. So that was one of the questions that I had in looking at the material, which is why only 3 stories. And that is based on other horse trading that has happened, the max amount available here. Additionally, there's a question about whether or not the city, or rather the developer, I believe, is continuing to pay for the property. So we can hopefully get some additional clarity on that. meaning that the city would not pay to lease the space. Lastly, I know there's some ongoing concerns, and actually they were documented as early as 2015 about the fact that this site would be used in the Gateway project. And so as that project continues to move forward, wanting to get clarity about as to how that will impact the timeline for this site. And while obviously that will be a concern for us, I don't know that that necessarily changes the fact that this is still the most appropriate site for the relocation of EMS. Hopefully we'll get more clarity on these topics in just a few minutes.
Fabrizio, I just sent you and David the phone login if he wants to, if he can hear us. I don't know if you can call him.
Yeah, I just called him, Jesse. He's going to be calling in right now.
Okay, great. Thank you.
Oh, I'd like to acknowledge Christine Berthet is here as well in the attendee section. Sorry, I'm just getting a chance to look now. From community
While on
report.
vacation, by the way.
Now, oh, from vacation, even extra.
Yeah. There's a reason why she has that title, Saint Christine.
I wish I were there, I must tell you.
Maybe some sort of community board exchange program, Mike.
Right,
I'm sure they've got community boards there.
right.
David, your mute button has come off. Can you hear us now? And can you speak?
I have you on my phone.
Oh, but you need to mute now your Zoom because we have an
I'm
echo.
gonna mute him. It's fine. I
Right.
mute him once he muted himself. Nope. All right, now we're back to the same problem.
Well,
You wanna?
Daddy, you have me?
Yeah, I have you now.
Okay. Okay, I'm sorry about technical
We
difficulties.
hear you, David. Do you hear us?
Yes, I do.
Okay, great.
Should I begin?
Here's the problem, David.
Yeah.
You can't have both on the same time. So I'm gonna mute you on my end, on this end, and you should still be able to be heard if you're calling into the phone.
Right, you got me now?
No.
How does that work?
Yeah.
No, that's still, we've still got feedback.
Sorry, David, are you clear? You can either have your Zoom unmuted or your phone unmuted, but you can't have both. One needs to be muted and one needs to be unmuted.
Yeah, I know. He's not. David,
Can he just exit the Zoom?
if he exits the Zoom completely, I'll lose him. Are you 273, David? Is that you?
273?
What's the phone number that you're calling from? Just the last
347 386, yeah, 3273.
273. Okay, that's what it is. You're an attendees right now. I'm going to bring you over because that's why you can hear us and we can't hear you. I'll bring you over and then that will allow you to speak and we'll be able to see you on your camera. There we go. Now try it. Now speak on your phone. Don't unmute your phone. Your phone is muted. I believe your phone you're calling in from is muted. So if you want to unmute your phone.
No, my phone is muted.
Okay. Well, I mean, we can just go ahead and try with the echo. But both things are muted now. So we can't hear you at all right now. So one of them has to be unmuted.
How does that work?
That's fine.
Okay, well, I apologize for the technical difficulty.
No
Yeah.
problem.
Don't worry about it. It happened.
Jesse, if you want to share my screen, give me the ability.
Sure. Give me one moment. Yeah. David, I'm sorry. I'm sorry. If you're talking about the presentation, you can share your screen anytime you want, but I don't have the presentation.
Okay.
There we go.
Okay. We'll start again. Good evening, everybody. The item before the committee tonight is for the relocation of EMS Station 7 within the community board. My name is David Harney, and I'm the Chief of Staff to the Deputy Fire Commissioner. So back in 1996, EMS came into the fire department, and one of the goals of the merger was to increase the number of support facilities citywide. By increasing the number of EMS stations, we would be better able to reduce ambulance out of service time and keep those units available for a longer period of time within their response area. You got to remember, back in 1996, the EMS only had 16 stations citywide and only 3 in Manhattan. However, today, the Bureau has 40 stations with 5 in Manhattan. And as everyone knows in this board, in the spring of 2010, St. Vincent's Hospital closed. This required the department to assume the management of the 5 ambulance units, which was 13 8-hour tours per day, which the hospital had placed into the city's EMS system. These units cover Manhattan's west and far west side, from as far south as West Bleecker Street to almost West 50th Street. Unfortunately, the agency's nearest EMS facility, Station 8, is located at Bellevue Hospital on 28th Street and First Avenue. So this presented a significant logistical and operational issue for the agency due to the distances which ambulance units would be need to travel between Station 8 and the dispatching locations on the far west side. You have to realize EMS units do not operate like fire companies, where fire companies leave the firehouse, go to their incident site, and go back to the firehouse. EMS uses a function called dynamic deployment, where the units go to strategic street corner locations, which we call ADAMs, and from those points, they are then dispatched to medical emergencies. Meanwhile, you have to remember that the EMS unit goes from its station to its street corner ADAM, to its incident site, and then most of the time to a hospital. And then at the hospital, it's a determining factor of, does the unit have to go out of service because of decontamination issues, supply issues, or administrative issues? So they're not going back to their street corner for the next assignment, but they're going back to their station, and they're going out of service. So if we can reduce that out of service time, we increase in-service time, and by increasing in-service time, we reduce emergency medical response time. So the agency worked with OMB and DCAS to identify and establish a suitable location on Manhattan's west side to support EMS operations in this area. Privately owned site at 512 West 23rd Street was selected in 2011 to serve as a temporary location for Station 7 until its permanent site might be identified, acquired, and brought online. So just so we know what we're talking about, as you can see in the map, and this is something the board had asked for, this is the boundaries of Manhattan Community Board 4. The red stars are the cross street locations of the units that come out of Station 7 presently. Every from what we call 2 Willie, which sits on the corner of Morton Street and 7th Avenue South, to 9 X-Ray, which is at West 47th Street and Broadway. Meanwhile, you'll see 2 blue shaded star boxes, and these are the agency's alternative apparatus ambulance, or ASAPs. You can see a photo of that below. These are staffed by 2 EMTs and are part of the agency's summer enhancement units, which improve our ability to reach a patient who is in an area quicker than a traditional ambulance can. And you can see that both of these units are working Times Square. Meanwhile, on the map, you can also see the current site of Station 7 at 23rd Street and the proposed site on 29th Street. Meanwhile, the table shows that we are running 12-hour tours for the 11 units coming out of Station 11 for a total of 16 units per day. Oops, wrong button. Now, this pie chart shows for fiscal 2022, there was a total of 38,057 emergency medical incidents within Manhattan Community Board 4. Of that amount, segments 1, 2, and 3, which are life-threatening, cardiac, major trauma, totaled slightly more than 12,000, or approximately 32% of all incidents. We should note the highest segment category, segment 4, had almost 9,000 incidents, or approximately 23% of the total, with almost 39 of those incidents, or 44% of the total segment, and 10.2% of the total number of incidents for the area related to some type of drug issue. And this was based on the final call type as determined by dispatching operations. So as you can see, a tremendous amount of activity is occurring within the community board, and our EMS operations in this area are very, very busy. Here we have a graph showing by month a breakdown of the 38,000 incidents within the board. As you can see, the slowest month was in February with 2,630 incidents, but spiked in May and June of this year. In June, we had almost 3,700 incidents. On average, we see slightly less than 3,200 incidents occurring monthly within this board. So this is a very busy area for the fire department. But since EMS Station 7 opened, the agency has worked to address operational issues and quality of life concerns brought forward by local elected officials, area residents, and Manhattan Community Board 4. At the same time, the agency continued to work with both OMB and DCAS to move this important emergency response facility to a permanent location. However, over the past decade, this proved problematic to the city's overall fiscal condition, the lack of viable city-owned space in this area of the borough, but also the almost white-hot state of the private real estate and construction development markets on Manhattan's far west side. But we do have a relocation option. For the past few years, and this was delayed by COVID, the agency working with DCAS and OMB has worked to secure a permanent site for EMS Station 7 as part of a larger development project located at 613 West 29th Street. With the support of the property owner, Douglas Development, the city plans to utilize an approximately 18,000 square foot facility on West 29th Street to create a permanent facility in Station 7. As such, the agency and DCAS have developed a site selection, acquisition, land use review to move this important project forward. With funding support from OMB, the agency working with DDC plans to build a 3-story, approximately 18,000 square foot facility on the proposed site. This proposed facility will have off-street parking for 9 ambulance equipment storage areas, and by that we mean oxygen and medical supplies, administrative and mechanical, technological, security spaces, ambulance staff, decontamination areas, male and female locker rooms and bathrooms, various crew spaces, a kitchen, pantry, dining room, gym, ready room, nursing mother station, bicycle storage area, training area, and off-street parking, 18 spaces for the staff. And you can see a rendering there on the right. Moving into the facility itself, you can see the 9 parking spaces on the apparatus floor. And on the right side, these are the various storage administrative areas, as well as the bike rack storage room and storage for personal protective equipment, as well as the driveway, which you take up to the second level. On the second level, you see just the 18 parking spaces for staff. So the fire department is not competing with area residents for the limited amount of on-street parking. Then the third floor, you have all the real crew spaces of locker rooms and bathrooms, the gym, the kitchen, the pantry, the captain's office, and the storage area, and the training room. It's a very, very simple building. There's a front view of the proposed building, and then a side view. So the proposed relocation of the EMS station to West 29th Street will create a permanent site for EMS operations on Manhattan's far west side, provide EMS operations with greater operational and logistical capabilities, alleviate quality of life issues on West 23rd Street, and provide the residents of Manhattan Community Board with enhanced level of emergency medical service. As such, we respectfully request this board support the proposed land use act. And with that, again, my apologies for the technical problems. We'll be more than happy to take anyone's question.
Thank you, David. I suspect you hear your own echo, which, having presented in that format before, I know is very disconcerting. So thank you for powering through.
I do apologize.
No, not at all. It was more of a, I've been there. I'm going to ask that you take your screen down, if that's okay, and then we can all see each other, and we'll go sort of around the horn and get some questions from the committee.
Okay.
Great, thank you. So with respect to her work on this project, I'd like Betty, I'll ask you to go first, and then we are going to actually go person by person to make sure that we get everybody's feedback. Obviously, if you don't have questions or have anything to say, no worries, but I am going to call on all the committee members this evening. So Betty, we'll start with you.
Oh, well, thank you. I think that the presentation was very clear and very well done. I actually had a quick question about the design. I don't know if it's kind of preliminary, the design, but it looks like the sort of modernistic spiky things are sort of open air parking or something like see-through parking. Could you clarify that design feature?
This is a very general design. You have to realize that once the project is approved and goes through DDC, DDC will obtain an architectural consultant, and there'll be numerous rounds of review and oversight, especially through the Public Design Commission, before a final design is approved.
Okay, so thank you. That's good for us all to know. In other words, it's really an illustrative design, not a final design. So no need for us to really comment on that design, right?
No, there's no need to come. The purposes of the design here were to lay out all the specific components of the facility and to make sure that the program that we need to operate effectively fits on the site.
Right, no, I understand that. And then the aesthetic details and whatever, that's, that may be changed. Okay, thanks. That's it.
Okay, I'll just note, obviously, if we do go forward, we look forward to bringing that back once you have live designs for us to react to. Paul.
Hi, everybody. No, I really don't have anything to add. I think it's exciting that we've finally gotten to the point where this ULURP is moving forward. We've been desperate for this to happen. I remember working with Douglaston to increase their FAR in the new building, and I'm glad that this is moving along. Thank you very much.
Great. Viren?
Yeah, looking forward to seeing sort of final iterations of design, and then we'll probably comment at that point in time. Just one quick question, David. Indoor parking for the staff, is that a norm? In other words, is that how the majority of the EMS stations are designed currently?
It's something that the fire department has been moving toward for a very long time. I live in Manhattan, and I know the problems with on-street parking. I don't want to say anything bad about my good friends from DOT, but this is a problem throughout the city. And the fire department wants to be a good neighbor. And we don't want to compete with area residents for the limited amount of on-street parking. But you also have to remember, because of our tour schedule, we have people coming in late at night when most people are parked for the night. So it's just an added level of, I don't know, comfort, security, safety, whatever you want to call it. But it also makes sure that our members get in on time and get in service on time. You should also remember that there is no residency requirements for our EMS employees. So they can live in New Jersey, they can live upstate, they can live out east. They're not required to live in the 5 boroughs, like I am. So, it's one of the things that we've been including in all our design efforts because it helps us and it helps the community.
Great, thank you.
Jesse, do you have something you want to say?
I just want to add on to that topic that one of the and I'm really glad actually Tiffany's here. I mean sorry, Tina. I don't know how I got from Tina to Tiffany. I apologize, but I'm glad Tina's here because she was with David Pincus when this was when this was the Quality of Life Committee, and one of the major issues that was with the 23rd Street station was always the lack of basically the staff parking out on the street, and that's still it's still an issue, and the captain there is always kind of working on it. And so I just would like to make sure people understand that this was a long time issue with being jammed under 23rd Street. They don't have any parking except for their vehicles there, and so therefore all of the staff parking was out on the street. And so I just wanted to highlight that.
Thank you, Jesse. Bert, and then we'll go to Mike.
Hi, I want to thank you for the presentation. I think it's very clear, very straightforward. I like the background material that you supplied us with. As a ULURP, it stands by itself. I think it's fine. Contextually, which is not necessarily part of the ULURP, but I'd like to know the relationship, if we have any clarity on the Gateway to the Gateway project, or whatever it's called today. And we have any timeline on that? And is there a possibility of consideration of another temporary site until this will be available, assuming that the Gateway will delay the actual construction? I may be wrong in that assumption. I'm just throwing it out. I'm particularly interested as a person who has not only visual access to the current station, but also, what's the word? Oral access? I hear him. Not every time I hear him, I say, great, they're doing their job. I hope it's not for me. And if it is for me, I'm glad they're doing it really quickly and they're going ahead with it. But it does present issues to people in the neighborhood immediately. And we've been around now temporarily here, 11 years, is it? Yeah, 11 years. And I mean, I see your people, they're wonderful, they're great additions as people to the neighborhood. Anyway, I don't want to go on. Context, Gateway, timeline.
Well, I want to speak to the issue first of a new temporary site to get us off 23rd Street sooner. You have to realize we have to find that location. We also have to go through ULURP and then have the funding to either retrofit or if it's a vacant site, buy new trailers. We cannot take the existing trailers, close down operations, and then move them someplace else. That would be detrimental to our emergency operations. So it's an interesting concept, but I don't know how that would work. And there's also the funding aspect of how we would go through that. And then if it's not city-owned property, it would be the leasing aspect of how we would get that done. So that there are a lot of steps that would have to take place into move someplace else. So is it really, and I can't speak to the issues with Gateway, but it might just be thought of as a diminishing returns project. You know, how much effort would it take us to go someplace else for how long before the new station would open?
Okay. Thank you.
I wish I had a better answer for you, sir.
I appreciate the answer. I know it's not the answer I would have liked to have heard, but thank you.
We'll go to Mike and then Carrie.
Yeah, well, that I had two questions. The one was the Gateway project. And it is not a good answer because it means we're gonna have to go through this again, right? At some point or another. In any event, I like the overall plan. It looks great, you know? And the fact that you've got folks coming from out of the borough to work here and you've made accommodations for that is a great thing. I'm just curious about how you operate, right? We see how the infrastructure looks. You've got accommodations for people to work at this station. Do you generally keep the people in the ambulance that they're assigned to throughout the day, throughout their shift? Or, you know, like you do, yes? So it's not like a firehouse where guys are shimmying down a pole, sliding down a pole, which I did when my uncle was a fireman. As a kid, that was a great thing. So you don't have no fire poles in the EMS station, right?
No.
Okay,
So,
good.
So let me walk you through. Say you and I were an EMT team.
Yes.
We would show up at the station, get our bag, get our bunker gear, get in our uniforms. We would then take our assigned ambulance, and then we would leave the station in a non-emergency response capacity, no lights, no sirens, and then we would go proceed to our course relocation. We would then go from, be dispatched to medical emergency from that site. Now, and we would only come back to the station if, say, for argument's sake, we went to an accident on 12th Avenue, and the person was badly hurt, and you got blood on you. After we took the person to St. Luke's Roosevelt on 59th, we then go back to the station so you can change clothes and, you know, decontaminate yourself, or can decontaminate the ambulance. But say, for argument's sake, someone was walking on 12th Avenue and tripped and broke their arm, we would take them up to the hospital, but because we're not contaminated, we didn't use any little supplies, we would go back to our cross street and wait for the next call. So that, you know, with the EMS units are constantly in the field, and they're only going back to the station at short intervals and for tour change. And because we need to maintain a level of operational capability on the street at all times, tour change happens over several hours. If you, so tour change will happen, say, from 7 o'clock in the morning, say 10 o'clock in the morning. And then there'll be no activity for many hours. The place will be very quiet. But, you know, a unit will come in about every half hour and go out about every half hour over about a 2 or 3 hour period. That's how an EMS station works.
So how many vehicles, so you're gonna have, how many vehicles at this station now?
The station can hold 9.
9.
And we'll have a couple of, we'll always have a few extras, spares as we call them, because as I always say, no one gets in their car in the morning and says, well, my car's going to break down today, or I'm going to get into an accident today. We have to, be ready for that possibility to make sure that we have an extra ambulance to run if that happens. Additionally, we're required by New York State law to take down an ambulance every 45 days. So the mechanical systems, the electrical systems, and all the medical systems on board can be checked to make sure they're in proper working order. So our fleet is constantly in motion on the EMS side, which is why we keep a number of additional spares on hand. Another reason would be if you and I were that EMT team, and it was, say, an hour before we were supposed to get off shift, and we get a job, well, we're not going to be back at the station to turn over our vehicle to the guys that are replacing us. So the lieutenant or the captain is going to tell our replacements, take the spare and get into service. So
Where are the spares located?
Spares will be located in the station. They'll be, because of the way everything rolls on the station and the amount of units that are out at one time, the 9 parking spaces within the station will be enough that there will not be any vehicles on the street, because the units are only coming back for, tour change, decon, or administrative. And that doesn't happen on every tour, that doesn't happen on every shift with every unit. So there's enough space in the station based upon our analyses to provide off-street parking for the ambulances that are off service and the ambulance that can gonna come in and go back out again. We're not gonna build a station which costs a lot more money to provide parking for ambulances that are not going to be there.
I thank you. Thank you, sir.
Great, Carrie?
Thank you, Jessica. And thank you, David. I, really appreciate you presenting to us twice. And I'm very much in favor of this, but I have the same concern that I had last week, which is that of Bert, which is that we have no timeline here and we could be talking about 10 years, so we're voting on something that we don't know when it's going to happen. I know we have Laura here from DCAS, so I would love to hear from you, Laura, if you don't mind, to talk about if there is a possibility of a temporary location for this to happen. And if not, forgive me, because the Gateway Tunnel project was before my time on the board, so I'm not that familiar with it, but I'm going to throw this out there. Is there another potential location for what I believe to be the debris that will be coming from the Gateway project, which is what this space will be used for? And correct me if I'm wrong. Is there another location for the Gateway project?
So I thank you for having me tonight, first of all, and thank you to the community board for all of your efforts involved in this. I had stepped in right when the community board was meeting with Douglaston, and I know DCAS had been looking for many years to relocate this site. I don't have too much information on the Gateway project, what it is going to use the staging area for, how long it's going to be there. I think when we were all sitting down, we were told a couple of years. There's rumors circulating that it's longer, but DCAS doesn't have that information. I know there's conversations ongoing about how long that will take. We too hope it won't take long, because I know that it would be very difficult to relocate to another temporary site. So as David had said, even if we can find one, which I think DCAS is always willing to keep searching, if that's what fire department and the community board and other stakeholders would recommend or like to see. But given that, it would still be a pretty long haul, because we would need ULURP and fitting out the space, et cetera, if we could even find a space. But as an agency, we are always ready to do that. We always, can work on temporary sites, permanent sites, anything that's needed and, is budgeted for. I mean, we definitely have hopes that this will move forward quickly as well, and that the Gateway project won't be a significant dent in this timeline. But I don't have information exactly on how long that's going to take or the impact to the timeline of construction.
Is there an opportunity to investigate another staging area for the Gateway project so that we can move this, much needed public health and safety service into the neighborhood?
Again, I'm not, DCAS isn't the agency that's having those conversations with Gateway, but certainly if that is something that we're asked to look for. But really, I'm not quite sure who's having those conversations at this point. I'm not sure if it's the community board, others from the city or fire department that might be able to, answer that question better than I can.
Is there anyone on the Zoom that can answer that question right now? Okay, I don't know how to, isn't it the city's responsibility to be able to answer those questions? I'm not pointing a finger at you, Laura, I'm just asking.
Sure. So I'm not sure if the representative from Douglaston has more information, or when Jesse and I spoke last week, Jesse, if you found out anything more about that timeline.
No, I actually don't, unfortunately, have the timeline. I know Steve Cherno has his hand up, so I'm happy to defer to Steve, just because I'm sure he probably has a little more information because he owns the property. But I will put this in the larger context, and Jessica and Carrie, if you want me to wait till later, I can talk about this later, or if you want me to talk about it now.
For me, it would be helpful if you could talk about it now.
Sure. So, what basically happened was, when we were starting the conversation with Douglaston and the other developer for the Block 675 development there, we came up with this idea to place the EMS station at this location. And to Douglaston's credit, they were open to this idea. We had numerous conversations with the developers along with the city to make this happen. But we all were understanding as well that the Hudson River Tunnel project would be happening, and what's really going to happen there is they're going to have their gigantic drilling device that's going to make the second tunnel, and all that dirt and all that construction material has to go somewhere, and that's staging. The other half of block 675, the western part of the block there, will become full on staging and basically where all the dirt shows up and from that drilling project for the tunnel. And so we knew that was happening. And so we reached out. At the time, Port Authority of New York and New Jersey seemed to be the lead on the Gateway project, not the Gateway project, I'm sorry, on the Hudson River Tunnel project, which is a part of the Gateway project. And so we met with them and we discussed this issue, and we began looking at sites. And that's where some of those letters that are in your guys' briefing packet come from. And so we got to a certain point where we were actually pretty confident that everybody was sort of on board with this idea that, we understood that this would be sited here on 29th Street, but by it being sited and then the Hudson River Tunnel project taking it over, it would impact the environmental impact statement, and therefore it would need to be a mitigation. And the Gateway project would have to mitigate the fact that they were going to basically put a pause on the building of a public safety facility for what at the time was close to they couldn't give us a time, but they basically said the project was going to take a decade. So that's what we called it for. And that therefore, for that decade-long period, that there needed to be a mitigation. And the mitigation was to find a brick and mortar temporary location. And we worked with FDNY get specs, and we got them sent to Port Authority, and we found possible locations. And these are all locations that Port Authority or the Gateway project were going to have to utilize or rent or lease for huge periods of time for either the Gateway project or the Port Authority bus terminal project, which are both of these two gigantic public service projects that Bert shaking his head because he's head of the working group for the Port Authority bus terminal project, so he knows this. And so the idea was that all of the issues that David has raised about relocating are true, but in terms of at least the capital funding and the location and things like that, that we would be going to the Hudson River Tunnel project and saying that this is their responsibility to manage and provide FDNY with a temporary brick and mortar location. And so that was always the strategy, and hence that's why our more recent letter was pushing very hard back in 2021 when the administration was leaving to say, you have got to cite this as soon as possible, because what we want to make sure is that then once the Gateway project goes ahead, that they have to then mitigate the fact that they're going to be, taking up all of the taking up the land that would have been where this EMS station was going to be. I am sure Steve Charno, who's in attendees, again, probably can correct me if I'm wrong on any of that, but also probably has much more detailed information.
Thank you, Jesse, for that explanation. I think maybe other people want to speak to this, so I'll let.
Yeah, so Steve, we'll pull Steve over. Let's get a few more questions going, but I do just want to clarify, Jesse, something you said, and apologies for everyone. I'm just also a bit new to this particular topic as it relates to the Hudson River. Would it be fair to say that you're saying go forward with the ULURP once this site is designated for this use, then you would be able to go to the Hudson River Tunnel, I don't know if you said authority or some group, and then say you need to come up with an alternative short-term solution for where to house this facility? Is that
100%? The only way we can say we can turn around to the Hudson River Tunnel project, whether it be Port Authority, Amtrak, the feds, however you want to call it, is to say that this project has been cited and the ULURP is done and we are past that, and now it is clear that this location will be an EMS station, and now Hudson River Tunnel project has to mitigate the fact that they are going to stop that from happening anywhere between a year to a decade.
Got it. Okay, thank you for clarifying. Allowing me to summarize that.
And just to go a little bit further, I just want to just explain that conversation, I think, will, as Laura has explained, I think a little bit, is not particularly an FDNY conversation. It might not even be a DCAS conversation. They'll probably play a role in it, but I think it's much more of a City Hall conversation with Port Authority and Amtrak, and probably all of our elected officials getting involved.
Got it. Okay, thank you for clarifying. I know we started a bit late, but we are at 45 minutes, and I know that sounds like there's a lot of similar comments being said, but I do want to get to everyone, so we'll just try to ask that people not repeat if they can. Pamela?
Thank you. I promise not to repeat. I'm on a much more sort of practical level. I saw that the building is designed with 3 stories. I know it's not a final design of any sort, but I'm just curious to know, there was no mention of use at the basement level, which I assume would have mechanicals, but shouldn't take up the whole basement. And also there's a roof on that building, which is probably available for maybe more parking, or I don't know. I'm just wondering what use of that additional square footage might be.
We're relocating the mechanicals above. We're not at this stage relocating the mechanicals below grade, because we are within the 100-year floodplain. So we want to make sure that should there be an incident, the facility would not be knocked out of service. And this is something that we've done across the board in areas such as Far Rockaway, around Coney Island, so the South Shore of Staten Island, where there is, prone to flooding.
Wow. I'm sorry, my screen froze. I couldn't hear.
We can hear you, Pamela. David shared that they are putting mechanical on the roof because they're in the 100-year floodplain.
Right.
And that this is consistent with what they've done in other locations.
Okay, sorry, my internet is dicey.
No
I may
problem.
vanish.
Like mine.
Heat is taking its toll. Tina?
I recall years ago, we were discussing, and maybe this has changed, the fact that the vehicles need to be plugged in. And at that time, it wasn't just electricity, the engines would have to go to keep the contents in the interior secure and that sort of thing. So one, I'm wondering if that's still the case, and two, what plans are being made for the emissions inside the facility?
Okay, great question.
Yeah.
First and foremost, in our facility
Sorry,
design.
Asher, my internet connection is really dicey.
Sorry, David. Pamela, can you mute? Or Jesse, can you mute her?
Done.
Thank you. Sorry, go ahead, David.
The fire department really is at the forefront among city agencies in its embracing of green technologies. While we haven't gone into the weeds with the design for this building, we will be including various green elements into the building, whether that be solar photovoltaic water heaters, geothermal water heating, natural lighting. We use these at all our facilities. But as it pertains to our ambulances, and yes, ambulances go out and they sit at street corners, and for years with their engines on, burning fuel, putting CO2 emissions into the air. And a number of years ago, we came up with a program for vehicle charging stations at the street corners. Unfortunately, as we were working to roll this out, the technology superseded what we were trying to do. And there's a new device called Stealth Power, which we now have in about 75% of our vehicles, where the vehicle, almost like a hybrid vehicle, the unit will get to their street corner, they will shut off the motor, and the Stealth Power will keep ambient temperatures in the crew quarters and the patient cab, as well as all medical equipment and medical supplies. And because it has an additional alternator, while the vehicle drives, it actually recharges the battery of the Stealth Power system. If you walk by and you see an ambulance, you will actually see a decal on the back of the ambulance that says FDNY green. And these are the green ambulances that we're putting out. We're actually in the process of test piloting an ambulance with solar panels. So we are very cognizant of the need to reduce emissions, and we're moving down that path.
That's really, it's great to hear that information. Thank you. Since they are parked sometime within the facility itself, will they be running within the facility? And if that's the case, what happens to the emissions in that event?
Well, first and foremost, federal emission controls have really expanded over the past couple of years, and the engines that are on our vehicles burn much cleaner than they were a decade ago. Within each of our facilities, when an ambulance backs into a station or a fire truck backs into a firehouse, and we've used this for more than 25 years, there's a system called Netterman. It really is, to call it simply, a gigantic vacuum hose that attaches onto the vehicle, and the suction cone goes onto the vehicle exhaust. So the engine emissions do not go into the facility, but rather go out a stack above the building. So it leads to clean air quality within the facility. And the most particular amount you get is really when you turn the vehicle over. And that's why we have it installed in all the facilities.
And in terms of the exhaust, is there a filtration system or does the exhaust pipe, whatever, go, how high does that go? You know, I'm just worried about the impact on the community.
It's usually above the stadium, the station. But again, you know, you have to realize that we're not turning vehicles over 10, 20, or 30 an hour. You're turning over one maybe every half hour. There's just so little activity. And you have to realize that we are using this system in 217 firehouses across the city and almost 40 EMS stations across the city. It's a proven system that works. But, you know, again, it's not as if you're doing the system in a parking garage. We have vehicles going in and out every 5 or 10 minutes. You have this only occurring once in a while. So the particular matter really isn't that great.
All right, thank you.
Okay, we're going to go to, I just want to check in with Kit. Did you have any questions?
Nope, I'm all good. Thanks.
Great. And I know we may not have her, but if we do, Peggy, anything from you?
No, I'm okay. Thank you.
Great. And Brad?
No questions.
Okay, thank you, Brad. So then we'll go to Betty, who has her hand up, and then Jesse, if you can bring Christine over. Oh, Christine's hand. Oh yeah, it's still there. Christine has her hand up as well.
Okay. First, thank you, Jesse, for the excellent historical background. And it brings to mind that once this project is approved, the ULURP is approved, that I think we should put on our to-do list in the future that Community Board 4 needs to pursue our elected officials and Amtrak and the Port Authority about the Gateway project and the relationship to the site and exactly how they're going to deal with it. So this isn't for the ULURP for now, but just let's keep that in mind because we don't want to just drop it and when it's approved. That's it.
On my list.
Absolutely. Thank you, Christine.
Yes, thank you. I'm also very anxious to hear the timeline and the gateway, the gateway story, but back to electric chargers, following up on Tina discussion, aren't you planning to have all the trucks or ambulances to be charged, to be electric and charged, so having an electric charger there?
Well, again, we were looking at electric charging stations, stanchions at the cross relocations, but the technology has superseded that. And so the charging station is now on board the vehicle.
But I'm talking about in the building.
Well, we have trickle chargers within the building, so the ambulance can be plugged in, or vehicles can be plugged in. But we're more concerned with the green elements that we're putting into the ambulance.
So you are saying, just so that I'm sure I'm clear, that you have all the ambulances are going to be electric and can be plugged into the building when they are in the building.
The ambulances can be thought of as hybrid vehicles.
Okay.
They will still have a motor, a gas-powered motor, but the gas-powered motor can be shut off, and the electrical systems and the HVAC system, the heat and the air conditioning within the ambulance crew compartment and patient bay can be rated at ambient temperatures. You have to realize 10 years ago, to do that, the ambulance would sit in the street corner with the engine on. So we'd be spewing out tons of, and I don't remember the exact amount of CO2 emissions per hour, but we'd also be burning out motors. So this is actually a two-phase goal, that we're reducing engine emissions and reducing engine hours, which is reducing out of service rates for our ambulances, that they're not going down for mechanical reasons.
But David, I'm thinking in terms of this building is not going to be built for 10 years, right? So in 10 years, well, I mean, that's what we understand may happen. So in 10 years, a lot of trucks and ambulances are going to be fully electric. And I'm asking whether you are planning to include charging stations in the building.
Yes, there'll be a charging station in the building.
Okay. So, and then the second question is the same for the individual cars of the staff. Are you going to install a charging station for each of those parking stations?
That's something we'll have to look through as we move into design.
Right.
But
So
it is a valid point to bring up to our design team.
right. We'd like very much that to be the case, so that
We'll bring that back to the design team.
so that they can use electric cars to come in. And
I
then,
will tell you that in fire headquarters, we have presently about 10 spots in the parking garage of fire headquarters, specifically for electrical powered vehicles. We have that out of our fleet shops as well. The agency and the city is moving towards a much more electrical
yeah.
fleet.
I know you are. I'm just making sure it's in this project and we don't forget about it. That's what I'm doing. And then finally, small detail, but it would be great if you could plant trees in front of the building for the whole facade.
The problem with that is the apparatus doors and the ability for the vehicles to egress safely. But again, that'll be something we pick up in design. Because I'm sure the Public Design Commission will be asking us about that.
But we're going to ask before that. This is a public, that would be great to have, you know, as much as possible, trees and greenery in front of the house. And finally, since you're going to have the parking inside, I presume you are not planning to issue placard for your staff, right?
No, because there'll be enough parking for people.
That's right. So
Yes,
that's
yeah.
good. Looking forward to have a commitment on that. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine. So I want to summarize, but I also want to have an opportunity. We brought Stephen Charno over, and Stephen, there were some questions sort of directed your way over the period, but anything you'd like to share or respond to?
Thanks. Hi guys. Hope everyone is doing well. You know, I didn't know the piece that Jesse had mentioned about the duty to mitigate, and it's funny. I remember some time ago I read the Gateway EIS. I'm sure it's there, Jesse. I just don't recall. But what I do. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was going to say it alludes to it.
Yeah. So
it's in it. It's certainly in it.
Yeah.
But it's not, because of the time of when it was done. It wasn't clear. You know, we didn't have it cited by then. That's why
I think that's right. So you know, a couple things. First of all, you know, it will be 10 years. It'll be at least 10 years. That's everything that I've heard. And I think, you know, Dave, who I am such a giant fan of, and I remember when we were now 5 years ago working on the rezoning, and between Dave and Jesse and Community Board 4 and Corey at that time, this was really the number one thing, one of the top things the community wanted to get done in connection with the rezoning. And if I had to guess in terms of how long it's taken Dave, with as capable as he is and how difficult things are, just to get this disposition ULURP done on a site that is available, I just can't imagine that during the interim period that Port Authority would necessarily be able to successfully cooperate to find a temporary site. I mean, I would be on Amtrak. I would just be very, very surprised. And I just don't, I think if there's an opportunity to really, now is the time, I would think, to see about whether Gateway absolutely needs to be on the site. I can tell you that they were going to take two pieces of our site, which they're now just taking this one piece. So they've already changed. And I just don't know if folks have really pushed to say, hey, this is a community benefit that's more important than one small slice of what is needed by Gateway, where they're taking all these other lands. And I just think I am a fan of you guys, and I'm a fan now of I'm a fan of Dave, and I was sold on this project and why it needs to happen. And to lose a decade seems unfortunate to me. And I wonder if anyone is really reaching out now at the elected level to just make sure that Gateway absolutely needs this piece for their tunnel staging, you know?
Thank you, Stephen. We're also joined by Sean. Sean, do you want to introduce yourself? And looks like you have a question or comment.
Sure. Sean Coughlin, I'm Chief of Staff to Councilmember Eric Botcher. I need to stop watching these committee hearings on YouTube, because then I just end up going, I'll just get on the Zoom, and then Jesse's got to bring me over. So I just got to start doing that from now on. Yeah, from day one, our number one priority to the Adams administration was, hey, there's this thing that the de Blasio administration really didn't push through at the end, which is this, EMS site transfer. And we were told, yeah, we're looking at it. Yeah, we're looking at it. And all the while, we had a great partner in Steve and Douglaston that was saying, hey, Amtrak is trying to take this land, and we're trying to slow them down as much as we can. But at a certain point, it stops being up to us, and they just get to take this land. So we kept reiterating to the city, hey, we really need you all to move this forward, because as Jesse said, if we don't get this ULURP done before Amtrak decides to take this land, Amtrak owes us nothing. Amtrak may owe Douglaston a disposition, maybe, but they don't owe the city anything. So fortunately, the city has started moving this ULURP through, and hopefully, as shown by the recent haste that they have demonstrated in wanting to move it through as quickly as possible, it will happen in time for Amtrak to owe a disposition to the city for the CMS site. But yes, as Steve can attest to, we have been haranguing the Adams administration for much of the past 6 months to say, hey, not only do we need you to move this ULURP forward, but we need your help in pushing Amtrak to not use this site for their staging, because turns out they don't give a lot of credence to a local city council member and his chief of staff saying, hey, we've been working on this for a really long time. It would be really great if you didn't deprive this community of the much needed responder station at this site. And they said, no, we think we're going to do that. So that was really frustrating, and something, again, that we expressed to the Adams administration we needed their help on. And the most recent updates that we have received time and time again is we are working with our federal partners to try to push Amtrak to find alternate options. So that's what we received 3 months ago. That's what we received 2 months ago. That's what we received 1 month ago. And that's what we received in response to our request for an update and our request for someone from City Hall to attend this very meeting to be able to answer these questions as up to date as possible. So that's where we are at. Unfortunately, not all of our calls have gone answered on this front, but we will continue to push. And again, we're really grateful for Steve and the team at Douglaston for being really great partners in trying to push this forward with the administration as much as possible.
Of course. Thanks.
Thank you, Sean, and thank you for your work on this. Jesse, and then we'll go to Brad.
I defer to Brad.
Okay, Brad. Brad, are you with us?
Yes, I'm here. I had a question. Regarding where the current car club is on the west side there, are they staying or are they leaving? And is that a possible site, because I heard they were leaving, that could be used temporarily? It's already indoor, it already takes cars, it has a parking lot, it's gated off. That might be a good alternative site that we could push for. Just a thought, because obviously I don't think we're winning the battle of where they're digging a massive transit tunnel, as we know. But I think finding the other spot in time is really what we been trying to focus on. So that might be a spot that I think might be available, and they could pay rent to Hudson River Park, which is what we also need too. So that might be a win-win right there.
At the light, turn left onto East Avenue. Thank you, Brad. I think there are some challenges related to, again, the ULURP that would require, as well as the relocation, but does anyone from, like David, do you want to respond to that?
If you send me the information, we'll take a look at it.
Okay, does anyone have an update on the car club on the west side?
I'm a little behind. I don't know. Maybe Christine and Sean do.
Okay, Christine, you have your hand up, so why don't you respond and then answer your next question?
I'm not clear about whether the car club is leaving or not, but I think this is not necessarily a good site for ambulances going across the Greenway. I mean, we've all been trying to limit the amount of vehicular crossing. A different site, which is 33rd Street between 8 and, I mean, if it was going to go in the street as a temporary 33rd Street, but I think what Steve was saying makes a lot of sense, which is really pushing like crazy to move Amtrak away from that site and move up the timeline.
So I'm sorry to jump in.
I think I just want to clarify something. What I'm saying is we know we fought for this spot and we get where we want to put it. That's not what I'm saying against. What I'm saying is, while if we don't get the spot, we do need an alternate spot in the meantime, correct?
Yeah.
And that's why I'm saying.
Can I, let me just jump in there before we go down a rabbit hole. Betty was part of this. I think I'm trying to remember, maybe Bert, you were part of this. I cannot remember at the time. We literally did site visits of locations that the Port Authority would be literally renting out and leasing. These are brick and mortar spots. So I think before we don't need to come up with, I mean, there's plenty of possibilities, but like, I think that's the next step. They're going to be looking for property and needing property all over the west side for both of these projects, both the Gateway and the Port Authority bus terminal. And so we can go to them and talk to them about that. That's a separate, I think that's a next conversation. And I do agree with Christine and I do agree with Steve about if the goal is to get it built where it should be built, which is 29th Street. And if we can pressure our elected officials with the help of Sean and Eric, all the way up the food chain to get, Amtrak to let go of this site, I think that is the first priority. And then, with the threat that they would have to mitigate this and spend money and spend time trying to find this location, I think is what we're using that as a tool.
Okay, thank you, Jesse. So just to summarize, I think what we're hearing is we have an opportunity to propose one letter or prepare one letter that indicates approval of the ULURP process and that requires answers to the questions of timing and resolution with regards to the anticipated timeline and a plan for any delays for the use of the EMS station at 29th Street. In addition, I think this letter could also, confirm our desire to see a design and to be involved in the continued design of the space, and whether we want to be so specific to say that should incorporate trees and greenery as was suggested, as well as electric charges and emissions plans, as Tina also brought up. We can ask them to commit to clean air and a plan for emissions that ensures protection for our community, and that we need to do this ASAP.
I'd move to go ahead, Carrie.
Sorry, Carrie and then Paul.
I would just add that we need to make it conditional of approval, that we know more about the timeline and we've investigated a possible alternative location for the Gateway project staging area.
Well, I don't know that we want to make it conditional because we want to, as I heard, we want to, and please everybody, but what I'm hearing is we need the ULURP to pass to be able to begin to apply pressure that the clock is ticking and that this needs to go forward. So we can apply the pressure you're referring to. I just don't know that we're saying the ULURP is conditional upon that.
Yeah.
How does, like, Carrie or others? Viren, it looks like you want to comment on that. And then
Yeah, I think I agree with you, Jessica. I think we should be focused on ULURP scope and how we are approving it more than anything else. The alternate location is, the onus is not on us at this point in time. We can write a separate letter to Gateway Project folks and asking them to find an alternate location. But I think let's push forward with this ULURP and get this approved ASAP. I think that's what I would focus on.
okay, back to you, Carrie.
The reason I would make it conditional, because it seems like from what we've heard from both Steve, I'm sorry, I'm looking around my screen, and Eric Botcher's office, I apologize, that we, thank you, that we are kind of pushing a rock up a hill. So I think that now's the time to make a statement that this has to happen, and this has to happen before 10 years go by, and otherwise, you know, it just doesn't seem like we're making the progress that we're hoping for.
Okay, Jesse, is that something you've seen as a timeline function can serve to accomplish the aims of getting it approved while also not delaying further approval of the ULURP?
Well, yeah, just to be clear, we're not delaying anything by voting tonight and getting the letter out. I mean, we're moving ahead. Just be clear, we have 90 days. The city charter has been amended to allow us 90 days. That gives us go all the way into October. I don't think we should take those 90 days. In my opinion, I think we should move it as quickly as we can. I don't think we can get it ready by next week, but we certainly can get it ready by September. So I think that's giving them already a head start. I will say just a little bit of, again, history here. The ULURP for 675 happened. We were able to get, again, thanks to Douglaston and Steve, agreement on the idea of the FDNY station being there. And everybody threw up their hands and said, yay, we did it. And now we're here, and it's been 4 or 5 years, right? And so I just want to bring that point that we can all say, yay, we got this ULURP passed now. And unless we get more pressure to get, City Hall, again, we're not putting the pressure on FDNY necessarily. We're putting on the pressure on, the electeds and City Hall to clarify that we can use this space that FDNY, once this ULURP is approved, is moving into that space. And that's what I think that we didn't do. We weren't able to do with Block 675 because we had a whole host of other priorities: affordable housing, green space, all sorts of things, money for the park. And so I think this is very specific. And I think, again, it's not a disapproval, it's not a denier unless it's approval with a condition that that clarifies that we want between now and let's say the council vote, right, which is far beyond our approval. It has to go to BP after that. It has to go to CPC after that. It finally gets to the council vote. That by the council vote, which is sometime in the beginning of next year. Tell me if I'm wrong, David. We would want clarification, and that confirmation that Amtrak was going to relinquish their desire to need for this spot, and the FDNY can build.
Okay, so could we rephrase that instead of saying that they need to relinquish, rather that a plan for immediate use of the space for intended purpose?
Yeah, I'm not, you use whatever language you want. I'm just saying that the idea that is by the council vote. We've done this before. We've been a condition that says by the council vote, which is the final stage of the ULURP process, that we get the City Hall, we expect City Hall and our elected officials to have clarified what's happening with the actual location and when, and that our priority is obviously that FDNY can build as soon as possible.
Yep. Okay. So we are, rewind the tape. Everything we just said for approval of the ULURP with the condition that by the council vote, a plan for immediate use of the space for intended purpose, obviously still wordsmith, and all of those other requests as it relates to continued engagement on design, clean air, charging, greenery, et cetera. Darren, anything you want to add to that? Your hand is up. Yeah, and you're on mute.
No, sorry. No, I think I can agree with that. I think what I wasn't very clear about is it a two-step process or is it one-step process? Meaning, does that ask go into this letter or is it a separate ask that the committee would be sort of raising in a separate letter? That's what I wasn't.
Yeah, I think what we I think in the ULURP approval for your ULURP, we have the opportunity to reflect these other points, and also most likely recognizing that, as Carrie said, this is a boulder up the hill, that there's going to likely need to be continued action and letters to this point, over the next.
Right. That sounds good, Jessica. Can we do both?
A letter approving with these requests and then a separate letter also pursuing the city.
For Gateway Project to find alternate site.
Yeah, I think to Betty's previous point, we should be pursuing this, we should be pursuing this as an agenda item in the near future.
Yeah, but I think it should be a separate letter. That what's
right. Maybe we can suggest
primarily now is important is to get the ULURP started. Okay.
Right. So maybe for the September agenda.
Yeah. But we should have something in context of what is the timeline. We want more clarification. We want to know what the land use conflict is between whoever is building the tunnel and the site for the EMS, and how do we resolve that? We want something very specific, not tomorrow, but say, as Jesse, what was the deadline? Beginning of next year when it goes to the council. That when it gets by the time it gets to the council, we want to know exactly what the hell is going on.
Yeah, so I'm going to suggest that we add that to the September agenda, and that maybe we can affirmatively invite Eric's office to participate in that discussion, as well as others. Yes, Jesse.
Sorry, if we're going to do two letters, in my opinion, I think the ULURP letter can wait till September. And again, I defer to David and FDNY if that's works for their schedule and for the city's schedule in terms of, dealing with Amtrak. But I think if you want to do that second letter, I think it's a fine idea. I just think you can get that out. I mean, I think we could possibly get that out by next week. So, I think we could, I think that would be smart to say, we're going to vote on this in September, ULURP wise, but we want,
Well, what new information do we have on the ULURP then that we don't have now? Like, why wouldn't we, if you are ready to have, if you think we're ready to have a letter of a more political nature now,
I mean, I just think your ULURP letters are usually a lot of background, a lot of data. I mean, if you guys are comfortable with trying to get the ULURP letter ready by, let's say, Monday, that's fine. But
because you're saying it will go to this month's board as opposed to
it would have to be vote. I mean, next full board is Wednesday, so I would not put the pressure on the committee to try to pull off a ULURP letter between now and Monday. I think that's too much for everybody. And I don't think the timing requires it, but I do think a political letter stating we had this meeting and you guys want, it's very clear what we want. We want Amtrak to relinquish the site and provide, FDNY access to build the facility. And we're going to be voting on the ULURP, after. That's my suggestion.
We're doing some real-time editing here of game plan. What do folks think of that? Any concerns?
I have one reaction to that it can be read, and maybe I'm just being a little too nuanced, as we're doing one before the other, which means that the second is contingent upon getting an answer to the first.
Well,
we can make that clear that that's not the case.
Yeah, because I don't want one to be contingent on the other. And we have to get the ULURP letter passed. If it's not next Wednesday, then it's the first Wednesday in September.
Sorry if I'm not using the right language, but I feel like this is our one opportunity now to use the ULURP process to get the location before 10 more years go by. So I stand by the idea that we need to make this conditional on getting our elected officials to find a different solution for the Gateway project staging area so that FDNY can move into this space ASAP.
I don't
Well,
agree.
I don't know if the process allows for that, Carrie. See.
Because I want to go back to some hand raising because I want to make sure we're.
Okay, sorry, I apologize. Sorry.
That's okay. We'll do Viren and then Betty. You're on mute, Viren.
Carrie, I think we have what Jesse was saying, that we have 90 days. So whether we send the letter out tomorrow or in September, we're not actually expediting anything. So the ULURP letter, we have a little longer time frame to deal with. What I'm suggesting that we do both. So we're not making anything contingent, but we are pushing pressure with the political letter now, right away, so we can vote on it next board meeting on the 27th. And the ULURP letter can also include that language. And I wouldn't use the word relinquish. We would just simply suggest that they should find alternate site. Because relinquishing will kind of acknowledge that we accept that they are actually going to use this site.
I'm for that, Viren, as long as the ULURP letter does have that language as well.
It should.
It's not one or the other. It's
No,
both. Thank you.
Betty?
No, I just didn't want the ULURP letter to get conditional language in it. I think we have to keep it. We can mention our need for Amtrak and others and the city administration to push to resolve this issue, but I just don't want, I just think we have to have a very clear letter that we are absolutely approving this ULURP and it is desperately needed. The site is desperately needed. Here, almost period. And we could mention that we need the timeline and the Gateway project clarified, but I just don't want us to say it's contingent on anything. That's all.
Okay, I think what was being proposed is that this is a political tool that that we are approving the ULURP, but we are saying that they need to use this period to get this thing done, which is the alternate site for Amtrak. And so it's not a deny unless it is approved with, please do this. But I think also what we're hearing now is that, and forgive me if I just missed a beat, but I think we're saying a letter now, like the ULURP letter would be in depth and take a lot of time to get right before Wednesday's board meeting. We have another opportunity in September to approve this letter, during which time we can work on getting this language right and sharing a draft with all of you that we can all get comfortable with in advance of the September full board meeting, which is well within the period of the 90-day, the ULURP process. Meanwhile, we can send a letter using Viren's language of alternative site, that this EMS site needs to be made available for these purposes pending the ULURP approval, and that everything needs to be done to ensure that that will be available once the ULURP passes. Does that sound?
Jessica, I just want to mention that Paul has his hand up. It might be kind of like hiding in his bookshelf.
No, I see it. I just wanted
Okay.
to put out a straw man that we can start moving towards consensus on. So Paul, Paul, do you want to react to that consensus and then add your own feedback?
No, I think you're right on that consensus, Jess. And I really agree with Bert and Betty that this not be a conditional approval of a ULURP. And I'm reading what Jesse is saying to us as, if we pass this ULURP, then it's incumbent upon Amtrak and Gateway to find an alternative site, versus us saying, we want you to find an alternative site before we approve the ULURP. And this has been something that we've been wanting to get approved for a long time. When we negotiated with Douglaston for this community facility space, it's now been dragging. We could have a change of administrations and the Gateway project may take another 20 years. I don't want this ambulance EMS station to be held up by a Gateway project. But I want to push forward this ULURP, and then we approve it, and then whatever mess comes from that gets cleaned up later.
Okay, thank you, Paul. I do want to just, I want to hear from Jesse, but I also just want to take people's temperature on allowing us to work on a draft that we would then bring back, excuse me, to the next meeting and vote out at that next committee. So what is September committee and then full board in September? I'm seeing some head nodding. Okay, but Jesse, yeah.
No, just for timing wise sake, Jessica, just to clarify that, this needs to be voted on tonight. The letter needs to be voted on tonight because you're expecting it to be voted out at the September full board, which is before the September CLU meeting.
Sorry, I thought you sorry to do this, guys, but I thought you specifically said that we should not do the ULURP letter tonight.
But we don't have an August meeting.
No, I meant to say that we should vote on the letter tonight, but we're not writing the letter for next week.
Got it. Okay,
I'm sorry
I appreciated that distinction.
No, my apologies. I didn't mean to. I'm sorry if I confused things. No, tonight I mean, it's up to you, the committee. I defer to the committee. But if you're looking to vote it out at the September full board, which is the first week, in September, rather than the October full board, you need to be voting it on tonight because you don't meet in August, unless you want to make an emergency meeting in August, which is no.
I would be willing to vote on the proposal as outlined, but before it goes to full board, whenever the authors of the resolution, the letter, feel they have a good enough draft to pass it around to the members of the committee for us all to take a look at it, comment on it, and then come up with a final that will go to the board the first Wednesday in September.
Thank you. Looks like Jesse, you want to respond to that?
Yeah, I'm sorry. I just want to clarify something that Paul has said and what I was trying to say. And again, I apologize if I wasn't clear. Us approving the ULURP you're right, is the thing that makes the Amtrak require commitment, right? So we're by putting a condition in that says, what we want by the council vote is that all of our elected officials work as hard as they can to get Amtrak to relinquish the space on 29th Street to FDNY is not contradicting. It's not contradicting. So I still think a condition. I think giving our officials and City Hall a direction, a roadmap to say, what you need to do between now and Y, right now and X, is this. To make sure that we all get what we want, which is an FDNY EMS station on 29th Street done. And I think, I just think that's, to me, I know I'm speaking a little bit maybe beyond my means here, but I think that's important. And so I just want to say condition on it is not in stopping the ULURP or not saying we have to find an alternative. They have to find an alternative location for the EMS station. That's not what I was trying to suggest. If that clarifies what we're trying to say.
Thank you. And we're still proposing this letter in addition to another letter, which would emphasize the importance of working through that plan and that timeline to get this done before, in a timely manner, the relocation in a timely manner. So 2 letters.
Yes.
Okay.
I think Bert made a motion, if I'm correct.
I think Paul made the motion. I seconded.
I think Paul made the motion.
And I seconded it, but whatever it is, it's on the floor.
Okay. Paul, you want to just confirm you made a motion?
I'll confirm I made a motion for 2 letters, one to approve the ULURP with the conditions as described in the conversation, and a second letter to the elected officials and about the Gateway project relocation of the EMS site.
And I'll second that.
And Bert seconds it. And all in favor?
Aye.
Thank you. Anyone opposed? Anyone abstaining? Betty is abstaining.
I don't understand when Paul said with a condition. That's why I'm pausing. I don't want to muck things up, but what is the condition? I thought you said you didn't want a condition.
No, I said the conditions as described, meaning the tree planting, the energy facilities, the reusable, all the discussion points we had about what we want in the design factor, and bringing the site back to us for design. I use the word conditions, plural, not conditional, not condition.
Okay, then I vote for it. Okay, thank you.
Sorry for that muckiness.
And Jessica, Peggy also supports the motion. Sorry for being late on that.
No problem. Thank you. Thank you, Peggy. Okay, motion passes. There are a lot of opinions here, so if anyone is able to help with this missive, please let us know. There's a lot to capture here, and we'll appreciate your help. We are on to the next. Carrie, back to you.
Right. I was sort of hoping we were done. Agenda item number 2, Starrett-Lehigh Building, 601 West 26th Street. This is an application for an addition of a new 10th floor outdoor tenant amenity space for building tenants, their employees, and customers. It includes construction of elements that are visible from the street, including guardrails, landscaping, and the enlargement of 2 existing stair and elevator bulkheads at the west side of the 10th floor, and the enlargement of 1 existing stair bulkhead at the east side of the roof. The proposal also seeks to modify 3 bays of existing ribbon windows to create a roll-up glazed door for access to the roof. This is in 2 parts, I would say. That's part 1. Part 2 is at ground level, the installation of a new sliding door bicycle entrance, building signage, and 2 marquees on West 27th Street at the center of the block, and the installation of a new building entrance and marquee on 12th Avenue. We were given a presentation on this proposal on Thursday, the 14th, attended by myself, Jessica, Vera, and Betty, and Pamela. And Jessica did a site visit from the street. There may have been other people who did as well. So if so, please speak up. We had some questions about what is the LPC rooftop approval guidance. Jesse asked that question, and their answer regarding this application was LPC would consider this type of rooftop addition to be a non-occupiable rooftop addition. And so the community board can focus comments on what is being proposed, most of which does not qualify for staff level review at LPC. In your review, the community board can look at whether the height, visibility, and size of the addition has an impact, negative or otherwise, on the building's silhouette, architecture, and design. Essentially, we should make our own assessment of the proposed design in relation to these categories and highlight any portions of the proposal that is found to be problematic. I think Ward Dennis is here to present this application, if I'm correct. Thank you for being patient as well.
Yes. Thank you. I used to chair a land use committee, so I know how these meetings go. I am with, where is Alessandro? I lost him. Oh, there you are. Sorry, Alessandro Mascia and Eric Schlemus from RXR. And Alessandro has the presentation, so he can bring that up. It's already a long evening, so I think we'll try to go through this as quickly as we can and let you ask questions. Eric, do you want to just kick off briefly?
Yeah. Good evening, everyone. Thanks very much for making some time for us tonight. So just kind of big picture to set the groundwork, as Carrie so well explained, there is kind of 2 parts to this application. One is to activate the 10th floor setback roof to create an amenity for the building, tenant driven. And the second part is to create some additional entries on the ground floor. Just to kind of break that down a little bit. So we are working on creating a tenant driven amenity for about half of the 10th floor, on the southern half of the 10th floor, interior space. And that will be comprised of conferencing, event space, meeting space, as well as a food and beverage program. In addition to that, our goal is to activate the south side of the 10th floor outdoor space to complement that program, which will be an extension of some lounge and recreational space for the tenants, as well as a parlay to the F&B program that will be contained on the interior of the space on the 10th floor. And as just kind of part and parcel of that, we'll be relocating to existing tenant exclusive terrace space. It's the north side of the 10th floor, but those are not as substantial as a intervention we're going to talk about for the south side. For the ground floor, there's kind of two main goals. One is creating an entry point on 12th Avenue that will access an existing west elevator that can be used to take any outsiders that may be getting reservations at the F&B provider on the 10th floor from the street directly up to the 10th floor roof. And then on 27th Street, we're creating an additional entry to the building that will kind of communicate with Terminal Warehouse across the street. And many things that we've been talking about with you all before about activating 27th Street, making it a little bit more vibrant. During the rezoning process, we talked a lot about the synergies between Starrett-Lehigh and Terminal Warehouse, and this additional entry on 27th Street is really to further that goal, so that the retail programs and the tenant base and the community facilities that are located on the ground floors of these buildings can better communicate with each other. In addition to that, kind of along that new access corridor that will access the main lobby off of 27th Street, we're installing a kind of what we consider a kind of best in class bike room. It's something that Terminal Warehouse is doing as well. That will be located along that access corridor from 27th into the kind of building lobby core. And just, to kind of make that that traffic pattern as seamless as possible. There's a new door that's being proposed adjacent to the lobby entry to directly access the bike room. I think that's a big picture of what the project is about. Turn back to Ward.
Okay, thanks, Eric. So I know you are all familiar with the building, Starrett-Lehigh Building, built in 1930-31. It is an individual landmark, and it is also a contributing building in the West Chelsea Historic District. Occupies the full block from 26th to 27th, 11th to 12th Avenues. Next, please. These are just two historic views focusing particularly on the west side of the building, where we have the 10th floor roof terrace at the left of the building, and where Massimo is circling on the right photo. We can see an aerial view looking down to the rooftop. You can see the clear story setback addition. It's not an addition, setback penthouse on the roof, and the small stair bulkhead at the west side, both of which are original features of the building and are part of this proposal. Next, please. So this is just a overall elevation showing the area of the work at the 10th floor at the top left, the 12th Avenue entrance at the bottom left, and then the area of work on West 27th Street, which actually be on the other side of the building from this elevation. Next, please. This is a current view of the rooftop. You can see it looks very much like the historic view that we showed. You have that clear story sticking up about 1 story but set back, and you have a stair and elevator bulkhead at the west side of the building. What we are proposing for the roof are really 4 things. One is all part of the activation. One is new railings at the perimeter and new railings at the clear story. These will be glass so as to be as minimally visible as possible. We are proposing a very small 2 or 3 foot enlargement of that west elevator bulkhead in order to bring the elevator up to the 10th floor roof. That will be done in exactly the same language as the existing bulkhead, masonry painted. And then we are proposing a number of trellis structures on the 10th floor roof and one at the clear story roof. These are open structures, not solid structures, so they will appear very differently than, say, an addition that has solid walls. These will be open on all 4 sides, and also be semi-permeable on the roof ceiling itself. And then next, please. And this is illustrating exactly those points. The trellises are highlighted in purple. The small addition in blue at the left to the elevator bulkhead. We are proposing to extend one other stair at the east side in a bulkhead up to the roof. That too will be painted masonry. And then we are proposing the railings around the clear story and at the parapet on the south side of the building. We are not proposing to modify the parapets on the north side of the building. And then we are proposing landscaping to go with all this. So with that, I will turn it over to Alessandra to go through the details on the roof.
Yep. So yeah, we just saw it in an axonometric view. And in plan, maybe it's a little bit more diagrammatic and schematic. It's easy to, again, visualize, again, the existing clear story, existing bulkhead and stair, the existing terraces with the dedicated spaces for some of the tenants, and then the general overview of how this is going to be reprogrammed to accommodate the amenity program to basically live on 10th floor and clear story roof, one being the continuation of the other in a certain way, and then the north side simply being like a roof replacement with the relocation of the tenant dedicated amenity spaces. These are a couple of current views, just of the north side and south side of the clear story. So straight looking at the mass of the building, towering over the 10th floor setback. And so this is more in detail how the landscaping, the proposed landscaping of the 10th floor and clear story are, how they're being developed. So on the south side and all the way across around the west of it, we're creating a setback. So to maintain the new construction at a certain distance from the existing parapet and railing, the landscaping, the intention is to actually obviously provide green areas and some sizable planting, which comes with the necessity of increasing the depth of the roof assembly to accommodate enough soil for this. So again, the raised let's say elevation of the entire roof also suggested by setting back and creating this service aisle, if you want to call it that way, will mitigate some of the visibility of the new handrail from the street level. And then a similar strategy is also adopted on the clear story, where we pull back so to have the ability to build some of the landscaping without coming up at the edge of the clear story. There is a generous portion of the landscaping on the 10th floor that is maintained relatively open, and so that we can maintain direct, natural light intake to the clear story, which again is emerges from the 10th floor, and as you can then understand, it provides light to the tenant space on the 9th floor below. So as we mentioned, the clear story becoming an occupied space will require extension of the stairs both on the east and on the west side. In one case, we are essentially adding a volume to the north of the existing doghouse or bulkhead. And then on the east side, we have the ability to extend the existing stairs straight up. Extending it vertically. And as Ward mentioned, all of this new, the new volumes are going to be built, and the materiality is going to match what's existing today. So we have some section to better explain how the new proposed structures are comparing to the existing elements that we see today. So these have to be read as belonging, if you will, some to the 10th floor and some to the clear story. So the new guardrail on the 10th story roof will exceed the existing parapet by about 3'6", but we will also see in section how it is set back, as I mentioned before. We have some proposed trellises, which would come about 8'8" above the height of the parapet. And then as we move up to the clear story, we have a new the guardrail that will come up about 4 feet over the existing clear story roof. One large trellis on the clear story will come up about 13'2" above the roof of the clear story. And then, as we mentioned, there is a small increase in the bulkhead size on the west side. The elevator modernization includes adding a new stop on the 10th floor, but we're also relocating the machine room, which then allows us to mitigate the amount of the, how much we have to increase the total height of the bulkhead. And then on the east side, the new stair bulkhead will align to that new elevation, of the bulkhead on the west. So this is a view straight from the west side. The same dimensions are carried over. From the north side, and a section here that highlights how the elevator hoistway, again with a minor increase, will now accommodate a stop on 10, which is here at this elevation, and then the extension of the 2 stairs on east and west to offer means of egress from the clear story. So this is a more, easier on the eyes, if you will, section that cuts north-south looking west. So we start to see how the existing parapet and the new raised landscape roof with its railing relate to one another. We come to the section across the clear story, and we can appreciate again the relationship between these 2 spaces. Obviously, the intent is to really give a sense of continuity to these spaces. They are there's also 2 convenient stairs being proposed so that people can move freely from one floor from one level to the other, and of course, accessibility is going to be provided as well via a lift. So looking at it in a little bit more further detail, so this is a section across the south edge of the 10th floor terrace. So again, this is the aisle, the 3'6" aisle that we're proposing, and this is the new assembly. There is in making this 10th floor roof occupiable and landscaped, we are including necessary top reinforcement of the structure. So we're coming up with stubbing up the existing structure and running girders north-south, and then on top of that, we're going to have our full new floor assembly, the depth of which is in part also driven by, as I mentioned, the desire to accommodate some planting. This is one of the sections across the trellises that we mentioned. So again, as also Ward pointed out, these are posted structures. They are, modular in nature, and they have an open structure overhead. So they're basically, large shading devices to make the, the activity on the terrace more pleasant even on hot days. This section is now taken on the west side of the landscape roof, where we go down to a lower elevation, and therefore you see how the whole roof assembly has now slimmed down a little. At the point where we are at the proximity with the clear story, again, we create a bit of a respectful aisle so that we don't run the landscaping directly into the windows on the south side of the clear story. Here we're looking at a section across the top of the clear story, the clear story, where again, similar strategy in creating a service aisle. Then landscaping comes in this case, the landscaping wants to contain the occupiable area and create more of a sense of confined space that then will open up towards the view on the west and the south side mostly. And so these are some rendered views of what the space is gonna look like completed. So actually, you can appreciate the type of quality that we're talking about for the trellises, for the overhead structures that are being proposed. Very open and airy, and yet providing some relief from the sun. This is a view looking back towards the upper stack of the building from the southwest corner. and then looking out towards south. And then this view is taken from the clerestory roof. So again, looking back at the building, now 1 floor up from the 10th floor roof. We're working with the MPFP to finalize the landscape design. They have started making a selection of plants and for this, and in proposing this, a substantial, green component to be part of that activation, we are looking at creating some continuity, some language continuity, and some program continuity with similar structures in the area that have an historic nature and that have started being developed in a similar direction. So of course, the terminal building directly north of Starrett-Lehigh is a clear reference point, but we're also looking a little bit beyond that. For example, the Empire Stores in Brooklyn, and very clearly there's also a desire to tie the narrative into the Highland story, which of course is a main prominent feature in Chelsea. Here we look at a little bit more in detail at the portion of the west-facing wall on the 10th floor, where we anticipate creating this connection to the interior amenity program. So, and we intend to do so by installing an overhead door system that will be designed to actually match the partitioning of the glass on the typical, and the very, recognizable windows of the Starrett-Lehigh building. But obviously in the open position, this will create this unobstructed, passage from the interior to the exterior. This map highlights the mock-ups that were put up on the building for review, and they were selectively, created to identify some key points. So just to be clear, we have views that will show the railings on the south side, the bookends, let's call them, of the 2 trellises on the south side of the 10th floor roof. And then the bulkhead extension, both for the elevator and for the stair on the east side, and then the most prominent points of the trellis proposed for the clerestory roof. We took a number of views, both from south, west, and north. We do recognize and realize that the building obviously is visible from very far distance, and the roof appears at some point when you're as far down as 14, or even, like in this case, I think we're at 16 or 17th Street. So obviously there's a number of angles where some of these structures start becoming, visible from afar. So again, what we're presenting here are the views of the mock-ups and clarification on what they represent, being that they are slightly discontinuous in the way they were set up. So you can tell here, this is again the view from 24th, 23rd Street and 11th Avenue. We start seeing some of the new proposed structures. Here we're down at the Chelsea Piers, and these are the clarifications on the various what the various volume, how they are represented. Please note that in some cases, and this is a good example, you might see a taller, regular modular structure, which is just a scaffolding system that is put up for convenience, but the relevant information there has to do with the netting, and the height of the netting is the key component. In this case, we're looking at the modeling of the railing, of the new railing above on the clerestory. And in the case of this area here, we're looking at the netting part for the elevator bulkhead increase, not at the top of the supporting structure. So again, the increase in the bulkhead on the west is a pretty limited increase in height. Some of the trellises, of course, are prominent as they approach as they get closer to the south side to some extent. But again, we'll have one view that will better maybe clarify how these are open structures that have, the visibility to the building behind is pretty mitigated by the fact that there is a pretty open section to them. From the Pier 66, of course, the view is pretty specific. It looks directly, across from the west. So some of these structures start appearing a little bit more clearly. And then, of course, as we approach the building and we're very close, either on the south or north side, the visibility is gone as we get closer. So we focused on this view specifically, this being one of the historic views that actually, represent the building in its entirety. And this is where we try to represent a little bit more the quality of how this new proposed volume is gonna appear once completed. So as you can tell, the bulkhead of the elevator on the west side is going to be obviously masonry construction, but again, we intend to mimic the same existing finish. You can tell here the glass railing that will follow obviously the contour of the parapet, and as we saw in the section, is going to be set back. And then this is the kind of impact that you should expect for the trellises on the south side, so pretty open structures. The planting is presented here as a simple, green outline. Is going to be seasonal anyway. And that's that for the proposed work on the 10th floor and roof and clerestory roof. So we're going to move to the street, the proposed storefront modification, unless there's a preference to pause here and discuss this part. We will probably prefer to present the rest of the deck and then go to questions. Is that okay?
Yes, please keep going. Thank you.
Absolutely. And what do you want to take it back from here?
Yeah.
Thanks.
So as I think you know, but the Starrett-Lehigh Building was designed as a sort of intermodal transportation system for freight rail and for trucks. So the base of the building historically had these very large bays through which either rail cars or trucks went, and some of the trucks would actually go up via elevators into the building onto the upper floors. Where we are proposing work on the right side in the 1930 plan is at the far left on 12th Avenue, taking one bay to make it an entrance. And then at West 27th Street at the top, the bike room entry and canopy that Eric mentioned before. Next, please. We have presented to you before, and Landmarks has approved a master plan for storefronts at this building. Landmarks has also approved various marquees and signage on the building. The master plan is really centered around this idea that the base of the building was open, so the new storefront systems are as glassy as possible, intentionally to maintain that sort of garage-like, open bay-like feel at the base of the building. Next, please. And what we're proposing here, this is the location on 12th Avenue where we are proposing a new entrance. To the left of that is an area where we were before you about a year ago with some modifications to the master plan. If you go next, please. So what we are proposing is very much in line with the master plan with some modifications. So you can see at top the existing elevation. In the center is the original approved master plan. And then at the bottom on the left side is the work that Landmarks approved last year, modifying the master plan to accommodate the fact that there's a mezzanine structure behind on 12th Avenue. We are continuing that language into the next bay on the right-hand side with a spandrel panel and then a small marquee that will project out from that. The signage on 12th Avenue was approved last year by Landmarks, so that's not part of this application. Next, please. And then this is a plan showing that location as well, and showing the projection of the canopy above, which projects out, I think it's about 3 feet. Alessandro, is that right?
We have the section. I don't remember actually.
Okay, next, please. Sorry. And then on 27th Street, you can see to the far left where parts of the master plan have been implemented already. The large red box here is where we are proposing most of our work. And then we are proposing another very small canopy over that service entrance to the left there in the small red box. Next, please. So this is an overall view of this section, starting with that small red box on the left, where we are proposing the canopy to extend out over. Everything else in this sort of darker metal panel area has already been built, including that entrance where the canopy is being installed. So the only part of this application is the canopy itself. And then to the right, we are proposing to implement the master plan in part and modifying that with the sliding doors that are required for the bike room entry, and then also adding a canopy and a Starrett-Lehigh Building sign on top of that canopy in the same design and detailing as the canopies and signage on 26th Street and on 11th Avenue. Next, please. So this is just a slightly closer look at the new canopy that's proposed at the smaller entrance on 27th Street. It projects out about 5 feet. And then next. And then this is a closer in detail of the bike entry. At the top is the existing, as we saw before. Below is the approved master plan, which did include entries as well as storefronts. And then at the bottom is the proposed elevation. The two smaller entries on the left conform to the master plan, so they would be approved at staff level. And then the bike service entry at the right will have sliding doors, and because we're changing the operation and some of the details, that does require a public hearing. Next, please. And these are just further details, also showing the canopy projecting out again 5 feet with that Starrett-Lehigh Building sign above, and with the building address on the east and west sides of the canopy, that 444 you see on the top right. And you can see on the bike entry how the details of the doors change in order to have the sliding doors, and those sliding doors are there so that people can come in and out with their bikes without struggling with a swing door or pressing door actuators and the like. And next, please. And then these are details on the marquee and the signage. Again, these are the same details as were shown and approved for the main marquee on West 26th Street, and as well for the marquee on 11th Avenue. And I think that's the end.
That's it. Yep.
I have one more. Yep. Okay. So just to summarize, the rooftop construction includes glass railings and open trellises, as well as enlargements of the bulkheads. All of this is visible, but we think is, we work to make it minimally so, and we work to make it fit in with the building in terms of maintaining a lot of the horizontal readings of the building. And then the work at the base of the building really is in keeping with or expanding on the language of the master plan and the prior approvals for other marquees and signage. So, and I also want to thank the committee members we met with last week, because we did include a fair number of updates at your suggestion in this version of the presentation. So thank you for that.
Thank you so much for that presentation. I will just say to the committee that the meeting we had was on Thursday. There was a lot of TBD photos in terms of showing us, what the actual height was of the proposed work on the roof. And that was still in progress on the developer side. And we got, I'm going to say Friday, late afternoon that we could go and visit. So it's been a bit of a crunch. So apologies for, not being able to have more people to visit the site, et cetera. And I will suggest too, if you don't mind, that we take the second part first, because my guess is that's going to be the easier part. So if anyone has any questions about the ground floor level proposals, we'd like to hear those questions first. Pamela. Pamela, I suspect we want to keep the proposal up so people can look at it. So I'm just asking.
Yeah.
Okay, great.
And I'm unmuted.
Yeah, thanks.
To discuss the signage above the canopy on the 27th Street side. The signage, the canopy is 5 feet deep.
Yes.
So is the signage visible from the street level above that canopy? Does it need to be 5 feet deep, or would it be better to have it shallower so that people could actually see the signage?
The signage, if you look, and maybe Alessandra, you can zoom in. Actually, can you zoom into the previous view? Yeah, the section. So the signage is set at the forward edge of the canopy, and the canopy depth is consistent with the other canopies, but also providing weather protection. So, and the signage, yes, will be visible as you're walking down the street as the other canopy signage is.
Thank you. That's not clear in the images. It appeared to me that the signage was actually affixed to the facade above the canopy.
No.
But I see on close observation, it's on little posts at the front edge. Right. Thank you. Answered my question.
Thanks, Pamela. Anyone else from the committee? Okay, Christine.
I was wondering, what is the point of the door on 12th Avenue? What is the utility of that?
That provides an entrance to the elevator that goes up directly to the 10th floor. So that elevator bulkhead that we're enlarging at the roof is inboard of this entrance. So you walk in and you walk back a little bit through the building to get to that elevator.
And that is the only place where you will be able to access the roof?
Eric, do you want to talk about the program for that?
No, so it's a second access point for the rooftop. And, obviously it can be accessed from inside the building, but we also wanted to create an external access point. Right now, the program on the 10th floor, inclusive of indoor and outdoor, is, intended to be tenant driven. But we envision that, if the F&B program is successful there, that there would be an opportunity for outside folks to, make reservations for that restaurant, so to speak, or to attend a conference up there. And that this 12th Avenue entry would be a more convenient way to access that in, primarily in the better weather. But it's meant for an additional convenience entry point.
So what you're saying is that the use of the roof is not going to be exclusive to the tenant?
Predominantly exclusive to the tenants, but there would be some outside traffic for the restaurant program and conferencing programs.
And you are going to ask for a liquor license on the roof?
Not on the roof, I don't believe. We're not quite there yet on the planning. Inside the building, yes, there would be a liquor license for the restaurant space.
Just so that you know that we have a number of limitations for those.
Yes,
so,
yes. Yeah, obviously that
don't go
exterior space will be.
spend too much money on this elevator, because that should be really for the employees.
Yeah, obviously the roof space will be operated consistent with the rules for the district.
Thanks, Christine. Paul?
Yeah, that was one of my points as well. And Christine, thanks for raising that. For me, it has more to do with the rooftop than with the 12th Avenue entrance and the facade. So I'm gonna, if you don't mind me kind of transitioning to the rooftop discussion.
Paul, do you mind if we just get questions about ground floor first?
Sure, yep, that's
and
fine.
I'll come right back to you for that.
Yeah, that's cool.
Okay, great. Are there any other questions about the ground floor changes, entrances? Darren?
Yes, just the same question as Christine asked. If there is another location for outside public to come through, 12th Avenue doesn't seem to be the most desirable sort of entry point. Secondly, it will also sort of address the issue of visibility from PS 66 of, extending the sort of bulkhead taller. So I would absolutely request the team to go back and see if there's a way to bring people in from the side streets much more than 12th Avenue.
Thanks, Vera and Mike.
My comments more to the rooftop.
Okay,
So
thanks, Mike.
I'm
I'll
gonna
come
keep my
back to
hand
you.
up.
Okay.
Okay.
Brad?
okay, Great.
Yeah,
Brad?
I mean, I think we all see that this is, a wedding venue, an event space, party inside, come up the West Side Highway, and there's going to be Ubers all over the West Side Highway. So, I just think we need to call what it is instead of saying tenant driven. And he just said it's a restaurant. So I just want to be clear on that. And I'll wait for the up top part. Thank you.
No, I think that's really fair. And we have a lot of questions regarding rooftop policies and restaurants and, BLP, et cetera. So is there anyone else who has any questions about the entrances, the signage that aren't related to the rooftop? Okay, so let's move to the rooftop. I'm going to go to Paul because he went first. So Paul.
Thanks, and this does tie into the comments that we've heard already, and that this rooftop has at one point been proposed for other sorts of facility space and other uses, and we have made note of the fact that the noise and light pollution from a restaurant at the roof of this is seriously detrimental to the Hudson River, and so we have had a lot of conversations in the past about very restrictive uses on this rooftop. And I think that the entrance from 12th Avenue, being an entrance of some sort is fine, but if it's an entrance to an elevator shaft to bring the public to a rooftop that was declared as a tenant use space only, that's clearly a misrepresentation by the applicants, because this is clearly being set up for public use. And to have an elevator shaft that extends additional height and is a visual distraction and a violation of the LPC regulations on height issues, you're asking us for an LPC approval to allow for an elevator shaft to be extended to bring the public into a function facility that you're not even declaring that you're going to be applying for a liquor license for yet, but you're going to need one. And that is where we'll have conversations about light and noise pollution and less about the LPC approvals. So I'll try to keep my comments focused on the LPC issues that we have here at hand. And I think that this is, once again, the owners of this building, the applicants, coming to us to ask for additional bulkhead visibility from the street. We opposed the elevations on the eastern end of this building in the past. They came in, asked us for more rooftop extensions, and we have opposed those. And so to them to come now back to us and ask for western side of the building elevation expansions does seem to be, again, the chipping away at the historic fabric of this building. I think I voted in favor of those elevations in the past vote, but I would note for the rest of the committee that this is a continuing chipping away of that issue. We have also in the past been very careful about making sure that temporary structures do not get approved that have, if LPC can restrict a temporary structure, those historically move over decades into permanent structures. Once the framework is put up, the visibility issues are diminished by LPC, then it doesn't harm them to come back and say, let's put up walls, let's put up more permanent structures in place, because now the LPC issues have already been bypassed because they wouldn't add any visibility by making those structures permanent. So my gut reaction on those is to sort of oppose those temporary wooden structures on the rooftop. But that is also something that I probably personally would be supportive of. I'm not personally opposed to that. But the one issue that was very quickly glossed over for me is the roll-up windows. I think that if we have a historic ribbon facade on a historic building, that's a landmark building. If this was not a big building like this, not visible directly, if this was a back of a row house in Chelsea, in a one of those side streets, and somebody came in and said, I want to take the back wall windows and replace them and put up a roll-up door, we would be apoplectic about that. But this was just really glossed over, that they're going to take the historic fabric of the exterior of this building and replace it with a roll-up garage door. And no one, and we haven't heard anything, no one seems to be concerned about that. But I think that that is truly the historic fabric of this building that must be most closely protected. All those other issues I personally would probably vote for, but I'm really kind of astounded at the notion of taking historic glass windows and creating a roll-up garage door. And if that had happened on any house in the Chelsea Historic District, we would be screaming and yelling. So I caution the committee on voting in favor of something like that because of the precedents it could set. And Pam, I see you laughing. I think have you had a big influence on me over the years? Is that what you're laughing about? So
something has rubbed off.
So I think that, for me, I think a lot of the issues here with the guardrails, the plantings, all of that, even the bulkhead extension, I personally am not all that opposed to. I am concerned about some of the precedent establishment of completely altering the historic facade of this building. The history on this building for us over the past few years is that every time we approve something, the applicant comes back and asks for something else, says, oh, well, this has already been done, so now let's do that. Oh, and this is already done, so now let's do that. So I'm concerned about moving forward with a lot of these issues. So that's my comments.
Thanks, Paul. I mean, I think we appreciate that, and I'm glad you went first. Honestly, I'm laughing with Pamela too, off camera. But you're the first person to comment on the roof, so you're the first person to comment on the doors. So it's not that we're glossing over anything. So, but thank you. That's really helpful. I'm going to go to Mike. Sorry, hold on. I check my notes. To Mike, who was also wanted to comment on the roof, and then Viren.
Yeah, about the roof. Yeah, I echo what Paul has said. I agree with everything he said. I'm curious about the tenant on the roof. Do you have more than one? Is there somebody signed up to be the tenant up there? Are there more than one? And I look at that not just in terms of the number of tenants and the access from the avenue, but in terms of the BLP considerations. Do you have tentative tenants aligned or what?
So I'll break it down a little bit. So on the interior of the building, the entire southern section of the building, east to west, if you draw a line, kind of running east-west on the 10th floor, the south section of that will be the tenant amenity. The north section of it it's a vacant tenant space at the moment. That is, does not have a tenant in it right now. The southern section of the exterior is going to be a tenant-driven amenity as well, kind of complementing the interior space. The north section of it is it's broken up into 3 small sections. Again, those are well inboard of the building, no guardrails, nothing that requires a landmarks approval. 2 of those 3 tenant terraces are leased to other tenants in the building. One of them will be coupled with the north side of the 10th floor because it's got direct access to it. So there is not a tenant for that last piece on the north side.
Okay, so the other tenants have the ability then to occupy the space, right?
Correct.
Okay, so are you pursuing another tenant at this point?
For the
No?
the vacancy on the north side of the floor?
Yeah.
Yes, of course. Yeah.
And has anybody come forward?
We had a tenant interested in initial kind of discussions, hasn't moved forward as yet.
Okay. Thank you.
Thanks, Mike. Brad?
Oh, I think I raised my point before. I just also make sure we note that when they have the one side, they're also going to have the ability to use the other side with the stairs. So it could be opened up to the whole thing. Thanks. And I'm kind of with Paul. I like the design. I like the trees. I just think we just got to call what it is.
Thanks, Brad. Viren?
Yeah, I think Paul has covered most of what I wanted to say. Actually, Paul, you're right. The sort of changing the glass doors on the west side is a problem because you're right. I mean, it's absolutely altering the building fabric. And if this 10th floor terrace is being looked at as some sort of an amenity, is a kind of a public space, and altering that facade from the terrace level is a problem, and I can't vote for it. That's number one. Number two, it's disingenuous for the clients to call this a tenant-driven amenity when it's practically an extension of the sort of rooftop restaurant. So if you actually sort of extend the courtesy of telling us exactly what the use is, and is it going to be sort of rentable space versus non-rentable, that clarity is something that we can actually respond to if you actually tell us how it's going to be actually used. Is it accessible only to the 10th floor tenants, or is it going to be accessible to all the folks in the building? That's one question. And question number two, in terms of programming, is the rooftop going to become a kind of rentable event space for anybody from the public? And number three, when you say public access, would it actually include any kind of non-revenue generating public use for the community? I would like you to address those 3 questions if you can.
So the space that is being created is 100% and 100% primarily driven and being created for the tenants of the building, the entire building. The only thing that potentially gets public facing is the restaurant program and a conferencing program. So imagine that there's a tenant in the building, rents the event space on the 10th floor for their annual board meeting, and they have outside visitors that are coming to attend that conference. Those outside visitors could access that space either through the main lobby or through 12th Avenue. Similarly, with the restaurant on the inside of the space on 10, similar idea that if there was a tenant in the building that wanted to host a dinner for their clients, they would be able to bring those outsiders into the building through the 12th Avenue entry.
So the roof terrace, is that itself is an event space, or the event space is interior? That's the clarity I don't have. Sorry?
Interior.
It is going to be only interior. Okay. The second question that I had was in terms of public access. You're defining public access as if I want to come to the restaurant, or if I'm coming there for an event, then I have access to it. Is there any other kind of public community access beyond that as part of your short-term, long-term programming? It doesn't have to be for every day. It could be weekly, bi-weekly, monthly, some sort of a program that you might anticipate.
Right. So that is not in our plans at the moment. We can certainly take that under consideration, but at this time, we're not, haven't thought to do that.
Okay, and that's it. I'm not suggesting that we're going to sort of vote for it or not vote for it, but if we were to vote for the way the sort of landscape configuration you have currently proposed on the south side, would you be open to consider pushing it or offsetting it even more towards north so that the south side setback is greater than what it is? That's number one. And number two question, and I might have missed it, and everyone might have missed it too, but the existing roof has a secondary clear story height, and you are removing that. Am I correct?
No.
No. No, the existing clear story remains 100%. As Alessandro said, that provides light to the double height space within. So we are only constructing on top of the existing clear story.
Right, but right next to where you're constructing that addition above, there is an existing raised portion that I can see in the pictures. Is that going to remain, or is it going to be removed?
The existing raised portion that's on top of the clear story?
On the eastern side.
Yeah, Alessandro, can you address what that is?
Sorry, let me understand. Can we go back to, maybe you can point out to me which?
Yeah,
I think I know what he is talking about. It's if you go to the existing photo, one up.
Okay.
The existing photo aerial.
Oh, sorry. Yes. Yeah.
At the right-hand side of the existing roof, there is a pop-up on the pop-up.
So on the clear story, so there's only some mechanical elements there, which we are the biggest element you see here is a mechanical run that comes at the top of the clear story and runs towards the middle of it, or towards center.
That's a duct running across the roof, not a structure.
Exactly. So we're maintaining some of it and we're relocating some of it. So in our proposed layout, there is a small portion of the clear story that is basically left unoccupied, that maintains some of the existing mechanical components there. And then we're going to be relocating, or redesigning the mechanical run that you see here. Is that what you were?
Yes.
Okay.
Yes.
Yeah.
Sorry, go ahead.
No, please.
No, then the other question I had was right now you have the challenge structures being pushed more towards the south side, and you have a substantial sort of green swath between the clear story and the trellis structures. Potentially, would you be open to push the trellis structures more towards north, thereby creating more of a setback towards the south side so the visibility is reduced?
I think we can certainly look at that, and I have a feeling that that will be part of the discussion with the Landmarks Commission. Can it be pushed back? Can it be pushed down, et cetera? So I think part of the goal, and it's balancing two different needs, but keeping openness around that clear story, because that's still letting light into the building as well.
Okay.
But I understand your point.
Those are my main questions. The last question, which is again sort of might be redundant based on the vote that we go for. Any of this space is going to be actually leased, in the sense that, let's say I am the client for I'm the tenant for the restaurant use, and if I want to use the outdoors for extended sort of diners, am I actually going to be required to pay extra for that? Is it a sort of, are you going to lease this space to the interior tenants?
No. So this amenity space is going to be managed by the building, by ownership, and it's kind of actually the reverse. We are bringing on, we're in the midst of, sourcing those operators right now, but it will be operated by a third party, but under contract with the ownership entity. It will not be a lease structure. It will be a management agreement.
Thank you. Those are my questions for now. Thank you.
Thanks, Vera and Pamela.
Well, I do not possess the eloquence to express what I am feeling about this project. Paul has expressed for me pretty much, except that I do disagree with him and with Viren about being comfortable with the additions on at the south elevation. This building, I'm going to read to you from the letter that CB4 wrote in April of 2021. I will paraphrase. It refers to the dominant flowing horizontality of the building. It's critically important. Figure ground relationship with the open sky is continuous, like the signature ribbon windows below. This was clearly the fundamental design intention of the original architect. Thankfully, it has been preserved for the 90 years since this building's construction. The fluid skyline, that phrase just captured me. It is just unacceptable to detract from the building's originally intended fluid skyline. That was our letter in 2021. And I'm sticking to it. I find it very disturbing that this one incredible, beautiful, iconic deco structure that was never meant to have anything exposed at its roof, even the elevator bulkhead, we're actually contemplating approving some modification of this in order to reduce its effect from, say, Pier 66. I'm just appalled, and I cannot vote for it. Thank you.
Thanks, Pamela. I have a question, and humor me for a minute. I'm sorry, I know it's late, but can you go back to the presentation, page 15? I'm trying to understand how tall the trellis is on the clear story, because I'm terrible at math, but it comes to like 18 feet. If I'm looking at,
No.
Okay, can you help me out?
Go back one, I think, or two, because we have the elevations with the measurements.
Yeah.
So it is that 13 feet, 2 inches or 3 inches. I'm sorry,
Two
I'm
and
blind.
2. Oh, sorry. Yeah.
13 feet, 2 inches above the
That's measured
parapet
from
of-
the existing roof of the clear
Okay.
story
Oh,
as
sorry,
it is today.
From the existing roof, yeah.
Yeah.
Okay, that's really helpful. And
Yeah.
the elevator bulkhead is how many feet higher exactly? Sorry,
So we're
because
raising
it's
it
sort
just
of
about-
2 levels that it feels like you're raising. You're raising the parapet and then the bulkhead, correct?
We are building a guardrail on the clear story because we're making it an occupied space. So today, the clear story roof is essentially a flat roof with no curb or parapet on anywhere. It basically has just a barely visible ridge in the middle, and the water just sheds north and south. So once it becomes occupied, we are increasing its structural assembly to attain the structural capacity and building a guardrail. The elevator bulkhead, this is a north elevation, so the elevator bulkhead on the right hand side is the one on the west side of the roof. We're only increasing by 2.5 to 2.5 feet. Again, because today the elevator bulkhead already exists, and the last stop on this elevator is on 9, but with a machine room that sits atop of the hoistway. We're going to be adding the stop on 10 and moving the machine room to the side, which allows us to just go up by 2.5 feet and attain the new stop on 10.
Thanks for that. So it's 2.5 feet higher than
2.5.
the original roof?
Yes.
Okay, Great.
The original bulkhead, the existing bulkhead, the
The
original bulkhead.
existing bulkhead, okay.
Original bulkhead.
You, Viren asked a question about the use for the interior space. And in the meeting on Thursday, you mentioned that that was a restaurant with the potential for F&B out on the terrace. Today, you said that it will only be exterior. So I just want to clarify that.
No, it's kind of, imagine it, as a corollary to a lot of what, is happening in New York now, post-pandemic with indoor and outdoor dining. That's the intention.
So F&B on the roof.
Yes.
So then we will have, as I think Christine mentioned right up front, like questions about lighting.
Yeah, absolutely.
Use, hours, noise.
Absolutely.
And the applicants, it's unoccupied, correct?
So right now there are the two tenants that I mentioned earlier. They're kind of exclusive roof decks, let's call them. That's probably the better way to say it. They're roof decks. And Alessandro, if you want to just go back to the aerial for a second. Two tenants have exclusive roof decks on the south side there. Oops, I just had it.
Yep.
So that one, and then there's a much smaller one next to it. Those two tenants use that kind of as outdoor meeting space, things of that nature. Those tenants are being relocated to the north side with, kind of similar functionality.
And do they currently serve alcohol?
No.
Okay. That clear story, is that part of the original building or an addition? It's part of the original.
It's original. You can
Okay.
see it. You can see it on the aerial
Sorry.
view right here.
I'm selfishly asking questions for the letter that we're going to have to write. So thank you. I'm with
You can see
Paul.
actually there are a couple clear stories on the building. There's one on I think that's the 18th floor roof on the east side, and then the one on the west side on the 10th floor roof.
Thanks. That's super helpful. I'm going to have to, agree with Paul and Pamela and Viren that the proposal for me seems like we are chipping away at this historic building that we've, I think I've only been on this board for a little while, but involved in some of the conversations. And I'm a little bit confused still about that 12th Avenue entrance, because it seems like the 12th Avenue entrance change is only in order to get people up to this roof, which it feels like people are having, they're not 100%, supporting at this moment. Is that correct?
Well,
So
to answer your
it's two changes, to the structure in order to get patrons up to this restaurant or guests up to the office party, for example. Sorry, I know I'm not saying it well.
Well, I think guests is an appropriate term to use. So yes, I mean, that 12th Avenue entrance is being created, dedicated to access that existing elevator and provide an alternate means to have guests to access the program that is up on the 10th floor, interior and exterior both.
Is there any other use for that elevator, for that 12th Avenue
So
entrance?
it does
If not for the roof?
Yeah, so it does currently access the loading dock as well. Right now it has some utility as a backup freight elevator. It's not used all that often, but in like crunch times, it can be put into service to provide freight service to tenants on the kind of western side of the building, on the lower stack of the building.
Last question is, would you be seeking a change in that entrance if not for the roof?
That entrance, that whole section of entrance, including what's still the louvers to the right of it, were already approved to be converted to storefronts and entries as part of the master plan. So we eventually, the idea is that of the master plan is that eventually all the areas that were covered by the master plan could become storefronts. And if the design of those matched what was in the master plan, which we're making small modifications to, that would be a staff level approval at landmarks.
Sorry, I said it would be the last question, but I'm a little confused by that answer. So you're here in front of us because staff can't approve this. So I'm wondering.
So what specifically does not meet the staff rules is we're adding that spandrel panel above the entry to break it up top and bottom, matching what's to the left, and the canopy itself. So it
rest, has nothing to do with use or access to the roof.
No.
Okay.
No.
Okay.
It's actually, we would have to make that modification anyhow, because that bay is a lot taller than was originally surveyed. So.
Thank you. I appreciate that answer. Thank you.
And if I could, just on the roof windows to door question, that garage roll-up door is not visible from the street. It's not visible from any public way. And the windows that are being removed to put in that door are replacement windows from 5 or 7 years ago. So we're not actually touching historic fabric for that.
Thank you. Betty?
Sorry, a little slow on the clicking. I guess I'd like to propose, maybe it's not timely, but that we approve of the ground floor changes and that we disapprove of the rooftop proposal, that it is contrary to the architecture of the building. And by the way, there's nothing in it for the community whatsoever. So that's my basic simple, that's my simple suggestion.
Thanks, Betty. Mike, you'll have the last word.
Yeah, it might be helpful to get rid of the screen share. But I think before we vote on anything, I think we've got to make clear exactly what exactly we're voting on. What's been approved already is something. So what little bits are we voting for? All right.
So
do you have a,
would you like me to try?
Yeah, tell me.
At the rooftop, it is the visible construction of railings, trellises, landscaping, and bulkhead construction and enlargement, as well as the garage door conversion, which is not visible, but because it's not restorative, does not meet staff rules. And then at the ground floor, it is the modifications to the 12th floor entrance to introduce that spandrel and canopy. And then at 27th Street, it is the construction of 2 canopies, one small, one large, the larger one with signage atop, and the modification of the master plan to include sliding doors for the bike room entry.
Yeah, well, that's a mouthful. I must tell you.
Yeah.
You know, so it comes far and away from the master plan, and that wasn't so long ago. So I think we might all want to have to think about this for a bit and consider each element and wonder whether we should impede you or not. I'm not inclined to do so.
So I just want to, Mike, I just want to mention that this application is going to LPC on August I'm gonna get the next LPC meeting. So the 12th or the 10th?
The 9th.
August 9th.
The 9th.
August
The
9th.
9th.
Close. The
The
9th.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Pamela.
And
So we have to vote tonight.
no, I know that. And I know that so much of this has gone beyond the staff level of the commission. And I don't know if there's much there that we have to, oppose. That's the whole thing. Anyway, and we approved the master plan ultimately, I think. Did we not? And so what can I tell you? That's where I am. Thanks for entertaining my comments.
Paul, you had your hand up for a second. Did you want to say something?
I was just going to say that I support Betty's concept of approving the revisions at the ground level, the entrance at 12th Avenue, the spindles and canopies. I think revising the master plan to have sliding doors on 27th Street for bicycle access just makes, I don't think that's a significant enough change. I'm surprised it can't go through staff to just get sliding doors versus swinging doors, but I think that's certainly not an egregious ask. Given that the visible bulkheads from the street are really being, the westernmost one is being driven by creating public access to a tenant amenity space on the roof. Well, I mean, the tenant could be a restaurant. And so we're labeling it as tenant amenity space, but if it's a restaurant is the tenant, then we're providing public access to a rooftop restaurant, and we're damaging the visibility, which is what's before us. Is the LPC application has to do with the visibility from the street, and it has to do with the facade. And so, I would be inclined to deny the extension of the bulkhead on the westernmost part of the roof, and I would be inclined to deny the changes to the facade to allow for the garage door. I could limit myself to those two, but others might feel more strongly about the trellises and railings that I'm not as inclined to. I don't care about.
Okay, so that feels like the beginning of something. Pamela?
The beginning of something.
Thank you, Paul. I do object to the trellises strongly, and even to the landscaping, the trees at the south elevation. I realize that trees are wonderful to have. I think that same effect could be achieved with grasses as part of the proposal, but I'm against the trellises altogether. I'm basically against the whole addition on that south elevation. I think it could be handled in a totally different way. There's a large grassy area in the middle, just in front of the clear story, and I understand you don't want to block the light from the clear story windows, but you could move the setting all the way back there and do whatever you want to do there and leave the southern elevation clean. And that's my hope. And if somebody wants to put that into a motion, I'm going to vote for it in a blink.
Thanks, Pamela. Viren?
Yeah, I agree with Betty and Paul and Pamela, but in sort of different ways. So I feel very comfortable since this proposal that they've come up with is in two parts. Everything on the ground floor is acceptable with the exception of 12th Avenue entrance, because it is not public access entrance at all in my definition. For the rooftop, I am amenable to sort of coming up with language where we can ask them to eliminate the bulkhead for the elevator and then pushing back the trellis, and definitely not doing anything with the garage doors. But for simplicity's sake, I would just say that we approve the lower floor changes and disapprove everything above, because there's nothing public about their proposal.
So is there a motion on the table? Would anyone like to make one?
I think Betty was on her way to doing it.
Well, we approved the ground floor proposal, and we disapprove, we disapprove the rooftop where anything is at all visible from other places.
But what I heard as well is the door is, even though it's not visible, we are not in approval of that either.
I mean, the 12th Avenue ground
No,
floor?
sorry, the garage door on the 10th floor.
Yeah.
Okay, add that one in.
Okay, so what I'm hearing
I'll
is.
second that.
Okay, does anyone need me to say it again, or does everyone?
Yes, I think it needs clarification because I think Betty left out leaving the disapproving of the entrance at the street level. The elevator access at the street level.
Betty, you'll have to correct me if I'm wrong, but your motion was to approve the ground floor spandrel and canopy, the introduction of the canopy, the sliding doors for the bike room, the 12th floor entrance.
But if there's a consensus that people don't want to approve the 12th floor entrance because of the way it leads up to the roof, I'll go for it.
You're talking about 12th Avenue, not 12th floor.
12th Avenue,
Yeah.
I'm sorry, the 12th Avenue ground floor entrance. Then,
So then the motion would be
I'll
to
amend it.
Okay. The motion would be to approve the ground floor changes
Proposals.
except for
Except for
the 12th Avenue
Avenue entrance.
and deny the 10th floor
The rooftop.
outdoor rooftop changes and the garage door
Right,
on the 10th floor.
changes that are visible and that include the trellises and also the garage door effect. How's that? Does everybody get that one?
I'm following.
Yes.
Is there a second? Viren?
Second.
Great. All in favor?
Aye.
Opposed? Is that Kit? Are you opposed?
Yeah, I'm opposed.
Okay.
I like what
Pamela,
the
your hand is up
architectural
as
team has put
well.
Together.
Oh, sorry.
Sorry, Kit, I didn't hear you. Could you say that one more time?
I was just saying I'm opposed. I like what they've designed. I think it looks cool. If my employer leased that space, I would be excited to work there. And if there was a restaurant there, I would want to eat there.
So I feel we have 2 opposed. Is that correct? 3 opposed.
I'm also opposed. It's Brad.
4 opposed.
And I agree. If the architect knew that he wouldn't be looking at rail yards, he might have really activated that roof. That's my opinion. And I think we could come up with a better solution to tighten it up, but I'm opposed to saying no. Thank you.
I don't feel the resolution expresses the nuances that many of us expressed during the conversation.
So we will do our best to express that in the letter. If you want to send some notes, Bert, that would be really helpful. Present not eligible.
No, let's call for a vote again there.
A vote again?
Why?
Yeah, vote again.
Don't we have to finish this vote?
Mike, we're in the middle of a vote.
Yeah.
We're not calling it unless there's something that Bert's wanting to specifically make an amendment on.
Okay.
Not right now.
Present not eligible? Abstaining? Okay, motion passes. Again, Bert, I've been taking copious notes, so I would love to compare them and in the letter, make sure that all of those nuances are expressed. Turning it over to Jessica for item number 3.
We have had the most patient guest in Christine Burkay, who is on our agenda for item number 3, to offer an update on the recommendations of the sanitation planning work group. Christine, I know it's very late and we've appreciated your engagement here tonight and your patience. To you. Oh, you're on mute. We see your screen, but we can't hear you.
Unmute. Yeah, I say it has been a long meeting, so I'm going to try to be quick, but it was a very interesting meeting. So as you all know or don't, for the last 6 months, there was a working group working on sanitation in buildings. And it came out of an effort which was done last year, 2 years ago, by the Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use Committee, which had a report on sanitation planning for many cities in the United States. The goal of the working group was to identify how buildings could handle and store their waste inside the building in order to minimize the use of the sidewalk. And therefore, all the work was very focused on inside the building. The working group has consulted with city agencies, Department of Sanitation, Building, City Planning, and thank you, Jesse, for organizing all those things. Sanitation experts, the chairs of the Bronx and Manhattan Solid Waste, Center for Zero Waste, and builders like Brookfield. And then as well as equipment manufacturers. We asked the labor unions to send representatives, but they declined. So what came out of that is indeed one size doesn't fit all. And we organize our proposal in new development and existing buildings and small, medium, and large building. And we have elements of design and operations. So the first thing I want to share with you is the key elements of the plan. The first recommendation we did is waste compacting and paper baling. Waste compacting is required today, but it's not enforced. And paper baling is not required, although whenever there is, recycling day, you can see a lot of paper which is not baled. So the idea would be to request all the buildings to get those paper balings, and the machines are not very expensive, and it would reduce the impact on the sidewalk by about 30%. The second one would request rodent-proof containers. Long time ago, there was a requirement that everything which is put on the sidewalk be put in a rodent-proof containers. What happened then was there was a strike, and a manufacturer of plastic bag gave back to the city. And since then, everything has been put in bags, but not in containers. So we would recommend to go back to rodent-proof containers. Waste management plan, the city now requires a waste management plan for building above 150 units. We think that it should be required for smaller building than that, like 100, and it should be much more prescriptive than it is today. Today it says, show us your plan and we'll tell you whether it's good. We suggest that this should be more specific and prescriptive. Another suggestion is that every building, new building obviously, has space for 1 week of waste. Would make a big difference because we could have the pickups split in different ways. People could skip a pickup. When it snows, people could keep the garbage inside, and it would reduce eventually the excessive trash on the sidewalk. The very large building should provide a staging area accessible to the street, which means that it's pretty much like a loading dock, but it's on a smaller scale. And they could keep everything there, and then the sanitation people could pull from there. And then there is at what time do you put it out? And right now it says it's about 4 or 5. We suggest that either you keep it in your building or you put it in the in the parking lane. And if you are going to put it on the sidewalk, you should put it no earlier than 8 p.m. But you have the option to choose which technique you want, not, you wouldn't be imposed on that. So taking those elements, I wanted to just illustrate who has to do what per our recommendation. For the new and substantially renovated building going up, going forward, they would have, for small building, the interior would contain waste storage for 1 week, and they would have to do compacting and paper billing. For the medium, they would have the same thing, and they have to have paper billing machine, and they would have a waste management plan. And for very large, the same thing, except they also need an interior storage space accessible to the street. And on existing building, we obviously wouldn't ask small building to do anything. The medium-sized building would have to buy a paper billing machine to reduce the size of their recycling, and the large building would have to do the same thing. And there are obviously some operational requirements which are similar to each other. That's the essence of the plan, the proposal. This section says, okay, in order to implement that, this is what DCP, DOB, and DSNY would have to do, but it's the same thing. I mean, it achieved the same purpose. And there are some additional considerations that are related to what DSNY does, but which are not really part of our requirement. So that's what we would like to propose. And the idea would be that when we review buildings in land use, we would ask for those things to be done, even if the city doesn't. And then we would provide that to Eric Butcher and ask him whether he could bring that up as regulation with the DSNY. That's it.
Christine, I think there are some hands. So we'll start with Bert and then Paul. Bert, go ahead.
Okay, hi, I think this is very well thought through and very clear. And what you're proposing is very important. I have one question, and it's just a detail. You asked DSNY to, what's the quote? Move trash collection window to a later time. What are you specifically referring to and why?
Well, as you saw here, we are suggesting that potentially some buildings would have to bring their put out after 8 o'clock. And so
8 o'clock in the morning?
At night.
But you're talking residential buildings.
Yes, what I'm saying is that people will have three options essentially, right? One of, if you have a very large building, you're going to keep your garbage inside that buffer, right? If you are a very small building, you're probably going to use the shared container, which is being tested right now, and which is in the parking lane. And then in between, you can do one or the other. Or you can decide you don't want to do any of that. It would be easier for you to just put your garbage out at 8 o'clock. So that's an option.
But the collection is done in the morning.
I know.
So what are you referring to the morning in terms of a later time?
No, I'm referring to the evening as a later time.
Okay, that's
not clear.
That's not clear because it says move trash collection. I'm
Yes.
reading trash collection.
Yes.
Is the sanitation workers, with the trucks coming by in the
No,
morning.
we'll fix that. We'll fix that. That's a good.
That's what threw me off.
Right. It's in the evening.
Okay, that sounds like that's Bert's question, Paul.
Thanks for this, Christine. I appreciate all this work. Two issues. One on building size. I seem to recall there's a a unit number that requires a full-time super. And I think it's 20 units in a building requires 30 units. Thanks, Pamela. So 30 units requires a full-time super. That might be a better threshold for the small, medium, and large buildings, because a building with a full-time super is going to have more success at implementing a lot of these issues than a building like a smaller residential buildings that individuals are responsible. So
that's a very good point, data point.
So, and the second issue is, I think that this is very smart for us to, as a land use committee, start thinking about how do we internalize trash collection sites and all. I would like to see more focus a little bit on some composting, even though we can't do composting right now. I would hope that in 10 years, the city would have a composting program such that we could include staging areas for composting internal to buildings.
Yeah, that's what we put here. You see that? That was a comment from Pam. Yeah. And we added recycling and composting into the minimum space requirement.
Okay.
Even though we're not doing it now, obviously, this is what we want to do.
Yeah, because if I think about the bins needed for trash, recycling, paper, and then composting, I think we need to, as a land use committee, be thinking about space requirements for those 4 containers.
Yes. Yes.
Thanks. Great work.
Absolutely.
Pamela and then Viren.
Yeah, well, Paul beat me to the punch. My issue was the composting. And when the last time I was present when Christine presented this and I brought this up, her response was that they chose not to include it because the mayor killed the program for the moment. But it seems to me that since we're thinking long range into the deep future, we should absolutely consider that composting is maybe the most important thing we can do to lighten the load and eliminate the rat population's interest in the garbage that does hit the street. Composting is vital and needs to be at the top of the list. Thanks.
Okay, Viren.
Thanks. I don't have a whole lot of comments. I was actually part of the working group. The only question, Christine, for you is, where do we take it from here? Does it go as a sort of collective letter from the board to the electeds?
Yeah, the idea is that we are getting, kind of a blessing from ACE and from land use and from transportation. And then I put at the end a proposed letter, which would come from executive committee at the full board and say, first of all, we want, we are going to take care of that. We are going to adopt that internally. So maybe we'll do a questionnaire that we give you, that we share with everybody with the new buildings. And then we want to have a meeting, facilitated by our elected officials with sanitation to discuss those. And then we want to take, and we want to offer our district for pilots. If they want to do a pilot, we'd like our district to be a pilot.
Got it. So would the letter go first or letter go last? Meaning, are we writing a letter to the electeds, including the agencies now?
Say that again. I didn't grab that.
Let me say it again. I understand the sort of overall plan that we're going to actually have a DSNY along with Eric Bosch's office. But prior to that, are we writing a letter from the board?
Yes.
Directly to all the electeds as well as the agencies or not?
It's going to be written to the agency and the elected. The letter is attached. It's at the bottom of this, was at the bottom of your document.
Oh, okay. Okay.
Right.
Thank you.
Okay, Mike and then Brad.
Oh, I think this is a great presentation. You just answered my question about where the letter's going.
Right.
So I'm good. Thank you. It's great. Thank you.
Brad.
Hey, Christine.
Hey, Brad.
Tackling garbage is always great. It's also going to go in front of the environmental committee, correct? Or did I miss it?
No, it didn't go to the environment committee.
So I think, you know, Marty and that team, we've always,
Marty was on the task force, and some of the other members were on the ACE committee. So we kind of made sure that the members were kind of everywhere, right?
my couple points. So commercial buildings, is that part of this program? I know they have to keep it inside, but is that going to be addressed somewhere, a smaller level?
No, we didn't.
You're nothing with private pickup. You're not getting involved with.
No, we are, you know, at the end, let me scroll down. Here we made some comments, but that was not part of really the strong recommendation. We said, you know, on major mixed-use streets and avenues where you have, when you think about 9th and 8th Avenue, right, residential building and small commercial, we're suggesting they should merge the residential and commercial waste so we don't have multiple piles, right? But again, these are additional consideration because we were not studying that.
Okay. And then I've always loved the idea of that pilot program, Christine, of putting, so people understand, a pen in the middle of like a brownstone block, and you're gonna bring all your garbage into that spot. Now, does that rotate up and down the block so it's not sitting out of my window for half the year? Or what's the consideration on that? Just a quick question.
Well, the pilot right now is a fixed pod, you know, in front of certain buildings. And what we have found, first of all, why it is important that it would be fixed is because the specification of how many bags it takes and the distance from the different buildings is a calculation of what's the best place to put it. If you put it and if you move it around, then it's become very far from the people who need it the most.
Oh,
So,
I understand that, but if it's on my block and you're putting a garbage pickup right in front of my two buildings, I think I'm interested in what the feedback is on the pilot program.
The feedback we got to date on the plan for certain landlords on 45th Street is that they are happy because it's going to be so much cleaner than what they have today. And the city is going to clean it after the pickup. So, but indeed, it has not been installed yet. So we don't know whether they are going to be still happy when it's done.
Yeah, exactly. So if you're like on 21st Street and you have a brownstone block and it's right there, it's a little different than 45th. But I'm interested in the feedback. We have to try. And my last thing is, as this board knows and my other boards I'm on, you know, we also should put some wording in there to new technology, right? I know you brought in the bundles of the paper, but you know, they have things you could put in your apartments that shred this garbage. And also inside these bigger buildings, they could have big shredders and compressors to really reduce the amount of air in these bags. And it really does reduce it. So I think some type of phrasing out there that to pursue the future technology and to try some pilots, I think is, you know, might be important, because in the end that might help us.
That makes sense. I'm all for it.
But I love the challenge of garbage. Thank you, Christine.
Thanks.
Bert, your hand was up, but I think you already spoke. I think you just didn't take it down. And also it looks like Paul was up and then came down.
No, I put it up for a second time around, just one comment, that's all.
Okay, all right, Paul, go ahead.
No, I was just going to follow up on the bins issue that Brad just raised, because I did work with Christine on the siting on 45th Street, and the location of the bins also is driven by access to the buildings. So there are oil delivery spigots and things like that into various buildings, so you can't block those. And then on the street itself, there are sewer hole covers that you can't put the bins on top of those. So the siting on the streets was, you know, it would be great if they could relocate, at various times, but the site selection that Christine went through for 45th Street was very elaborate. And I do, Brad, appreciate the concept of future planning. I could have sworn you were going to ask for drone pickup of garbage, and I was surprised you didn't. So I think, but the looking forward is always an important thing to think about. Thank you.
Yeah, my comment was something about, you made additional considerations, Christine.
Yeah.
You talked about unified pickup with commercial and residential buildings.
We talked about that only on
I just want to make a comment, Christine.
Right.
Historically, the Department of Sanitation did pick up commercial refuse in residential buildings until sometime in the late 1950s under Wagner, when it was changed.
Yeah.
So we can say we would like it to go back the way it was.
As in the past, right?
And,
and
in some places that still happens informally, like in certain areas of Brooklyn, sanitation picks up for commercial if it's in.
Or it's the reverse.
Then they get a very good Christmas gift.
I heard that it's the reverse. For example, Bob Benfato, who was on the plant, said, in my district, everything is done by commercial carters. Sanitation doesn't do it. So there is a lot of setups there, really.
Yeah. Sorry, I did just have one question and then we'll go back around. Christine, do you think is there a mention, or should there be a mention just around the issue of efficiency and what these proposals mean for DSNY meaning, right, they're always so, like, even on the issue of composting, they're always so concerned about costs, and this is a different way. Like if you talk about the different kinds of bins, it's a different way of working.
Yeah, that's a good point. Although the goal was not of the task force was not to think about efficiency of sanitation, right?
Understood.
The goal was, but there are a lot of things there which are efficient. I mean, which are more efficient. I can just think about the idea of keeping the garbage inside when it snows and not piling up all those things and having them trying to catch up for 2 days, and doing those things. So it would be cleaner for us and more efficient for them. And we may want to add a little paragraph on that. That's a good idea.
Yeah, I think just even a sentence in your kind of last
yes.
paragraph could just say, you don't even have to address all the issues of efficiency, but that you're open to those discussions where you can point out the opportunities for more efficient operations.
That's a very good idea.
Also, was there, I like all of these things and would like my building and block and, city to adopt them. But was there any consideration for the physical nature of buildings, and if they, what if they cannot accommodate these things?
Well, I think these guidelines,
particularly for the existing buildings, of course, like any new
when I'm in the existing building, obviously for the small, we thought about the medium and say paper building machines, a very small thing, and if you really compact your garbage, it's going to take less space. So it seems that this requirement would be feasible. I envision that people could ask for exception. That would be a process you go through when they say, I can't do it. And obviously you would have to be, get an inspection, and people would come and say, no, you can't do it. Fine, that's done. If we can get 50% of the building to do this, that would be great.
Yeah.
It's not shooting for 100% nor for constraints.
Yeah, understood. Okay, Pamela, and then Brad, your hand is still up.
Excuse me if I missed this in the presentation, but on my block, we have garbage pickup 3 times a week. In your plan, do you anticipate reducing that? Did I hear once a week pickup?
No, we didn't say that. We said,
I'm sorry.
We said you should have enough space to have 1 week of garbage. But for example, we're thinking that it could be 4 days, and then the day where they do the garbage, they don't do the recycling, because we learned that they are sending 2 trucks.
Yes.
So if they have 2 trucks, what's the point of putting everything out the same day, right?
There's 2 trucks for recycling.
Yes.
And then the truck for the
Right.
black bags. So
So-
that's 3 trucks on the
these are the
recycling
kind of-
pickup days. It's
right.
3 trucks.
These are the kind of thing, but then indeed, if you have, I mean, you want to have some flexibility here, which would help.
Yeah. So on my block, it's on the recycling day, the first truck that comes through at 4 or 5 in the morning picks up the cans and bottles recycling, which is the noisiest part, and everybody wakes up. And then around 7 or 8 o'clock, the next recycling truck for the paper, cardboard and paper. And that's very quiet. And then the
And that
last
would be-
pickup, if we're lucky, the last pickup is the regular garbage, and that will get picked up sometime before noon, if at all.
Oh, yeah.
Uh-huh.
Okay.
Right, Brad, do you have another comment? Otherwise, I think we're ready to wrap this up. Yeah, go ahead.
Yeah, one last one. Christine, I know I'm reaching, and we have a pet problem. Is it possible to put another painted area in front of the refuse area to call it a place to bring your pet to go to the washroom? Just a thought.
Oh,
Because if
I know what
everybody's
you're saying.
hauling
They are
garbage
doing-
down there,
Yeah.
and we could just take one parking spot and say, all right, here's a little area. Just a thought.
Well, just when everybody's looking for a bathroom for people, right? That would be the bathroom for pets.
That's right.
Okay, I'm skipping on this one.
We're becoming
Although they have that.
completely-
It's after 10. You're getting all the crazy ideas
Okay.
over here.
Right.
Christine, thank you for this work and for soliciting this committee's feedback. Any concluding remarks?
No,
Yeah.
I think we'd love, the consensus that this is a good idea, and then we'll bring it to the execs and to the full board.
Are
Yeah.
these going to be sponsored boxes? Like, is there going to be, what's around the box, Christine? My last question.
Around
Is it
what
like
box?
Around the center on 45th where they're going to put the actual container so everybody put their garbage in?
Yeah.
What's the aesthetics of that?
Oh, it looks really good. I'll send it to you guys. I'll
We're
send
not
it to
gonna-
you.
Not going to run advertising space.
Yeah.
That's what I'm saying. Is
No,
it not- we
they
don't
look
want
like
ads on it. That's what I'm
they
getting
are
at.
used. There are boxes right now which are being used in high-end properties and suburbs. So they look really good, and a bunch of them are used even in New York City. We have seen them on 46th Street, etc. So I'll send a picture, and then you can all see it.
Good.
Okay, so we are not taking a vote, but we are taking a vote. Jesse.
We've been doing this with the other committees. It's just a consensus vote. You're not voting on a letter per se.
Right.
It's voting on the consensus of the recommendations. And for the letter, the letter will be proposed at exec, and obviously everybody can vote on how they feel specifics of the letter at full board.
Okay, so is everyone in favor of a consensus letter to move this, or a consensus vote to move this forward? Yes?
Yes.
Great.
Thank you
great
all.
voting. Tina.
Appreciate it. Thank you so much.
Thank you, Christine.
Great, thank you.
Good night, everybody.
No,
Great
Pamela.
job, Chair.
No.
Great job.
Okay. So we have agenda item number 4.
Oh.
Okay, so we've been, chatting on the side about going through the LPC checklist. Wait, how many people are
Of
left?
course.
1, 2, 3, and we may have lost our quorum.
Just need quorum to start.
Okay, good. But so we really think this is an important thing to do, and I think that it would be fine if I've had a lot of people comment on the list, on the questions, and make changes, and have incorporated the majority of those into the document. If everybody agrees that they will review it on their own instead of going line by line right now at 10 o'clock, and send comments who haven't. We can bring it up in September and just vote on it and maybe not, have to spend 2 hours right now doing that. So does everyone feel okay about that?
Can I just ask a question?
Yeah, of course.
Before we vote on it, do we want Hell's Kitchen Land Use to review it and have input on it?
Yeah, we talked about that before, right? Didn't we decide that we should vote on it and then pass it to them to see if they, remind me, sorry, if I don't want to misrepresent what we decided, but we did have that conversation, Paul. I can't fully remember.
I was wondering, I don't know if this is something that's going to have to go to full board. It's going to have to come out of one committee, I would think. So if we vote on it, I would think we'd want Hell's Kitchen Land Use to have input on it before Chelsea Land Use votes it out of committee.
I see what you mean.
And then once CLU votes it out, it then goes to full board.
So then help me understand the timeline, because, summer and no August meetings and whatnot. So what do you think we should do? Because we're not going to have an official, even real, full committee conversation around it. It sort of keeps going into this, like, here it is, make your comments. We'll talk about it next time. So I just want to make sure we get to talk about it before we pass it on. Jesse looks like
Jesse has an idea.
I was just going to say, I think if Paul, if you feel confident that we could put this on the agenda for Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use in September, it meets before CLU, right? Usually 2 weeks to a 1 week difference. And you could we could get that on the agenda. We'll send out the checklist to the committee members. They can, speak. You guys can have a conversation about it. You bring back all of those points back to CLU in September. If it's all a cohesive conversation, set of points, then CLU votes it out. And then, my perception was that if it's solely a CLU policy, kind of a CLU checklist, it wasn't going to require like a full board. It wouldn't necessarily require, another committee. But I think if we're looking to have it more of a, across the board, then sure. Then both committees could, weigh in, and then you're voting it out in October. So it wouldn't slow down anything necessarily per se, because CLU would still be discussing and voting on it in September. It just matters whether you think it could be put on in September at Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use.
What if whatever recent comments or edits came in for the document, and then Jessica and Carrie could incorporate that, then it could be called a final draft. And that final draft could go to Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use. And if they have comments, they could get them to Chelsea Land Use. And so if that's all in September, wouldn't that follow?
That's as long as Carrie and Jessica feel like that's work-wise, that's fine.
I just want to say I may be a minority of one, but I don't see this necessarily having to go to full board. When at BLP, we have a questionnaire that we ask all the applicants to fill out. As far as I know, that's never gone to full board. It's just the way the committee operates. It helps the committee operate and function more efficiently.
I think that's what
That's
what Jesse was suggesting, and that it doesn't have to go to full board. So what if it comes out of our committee, but then Clinton Hell's Kitchen just adopts it if they agree or amends it? I mean, I guess it's better to have one checklist.
Oh, only one document.
Yeah.
Jesse, what is your memory of the housing checklist that we developed in the housing committee?
For whatever purposes, housing felt it was necessary to put that on full boards.
That was a full board vote.
The transportation has many checklists and stipulation forms for all sorts of different things that they send out, bus stop applications, all sorts of stuff that have not gone through because they're solely committee focused checklists. So again, I think if we want to include another committee, I think at that point you're crossing into, two committees, and you're saying, I think that would normally require there's no hard and fast rules about this, but would require
More of a full board.
I don't think we're there yet. I mean, it doesn't, full board vote actually doesn't matter because they're still talking about September. So I think we can table the full board conversation and just say that we're going to hold this in conversation in September. And I think if Paul wants to talk to Carrie and Jessica and see if we do want to bring it to another committee, that's a conversation you guys could have.
I just think it's important that if we have LPC procedures from one land use committee of community board 4, it should be the same land use procedures, LPC procedures for both land use committees. It doesn't, I may have misspoke. I don't know if it has to go to full board for approval, but I think that both land use committees should have the same perspective because ultimately all letters come from the full board. So we should have one set of standards for LPC applications from both land use committees, in my opinion.
I think then you go ahead and bring it onto the committee. You bring it onto Hell's Kitchen, Clinton Hell's Kitchen Land Use in September. Then you bring it to the CLU, and
and then we stop there.
There were major disagreements.
No, there have not been. It's been very minor stuff. So whatever we did.
Predominantly, let's be realistic, CLU is the historic, preservation committee in terms of just the amount of landmarks and Hell's, and historic districts that you have compared to
Pamela?
I think it would be really helpful to have the Clinton Hell's Kitchen members be given an opportunity to have some input, because the more people that have ideas that maybe we didn't have, I think that's a good idea.
Yeah,
I think Paul's right about this.
So my thing is, if Jessica and Carrie, you have sort of maybe say to this committee, there's a deadline of, I don't know, September 1st or whatever to edit. And then you guys just compile all notes from this committee, and then we'll take that final, as Betty points out, final draft, and we'll bring it to Hell's Kitchen and get some input from them.
Great.
I think we have a plan.
Sounds like a plan.
Yeah.
Thank you.
I'm really sorry. Before you go, I have one more thing to say, and I don't mean to be difficult, but this is just to say it on the record. Because when Paul made the motion on agenda item number 1, it was a little bit confusing as to what the actual motion was and what the word conditions meant. I'm gonna change my vote to abstain from approve, because I do think that should be conditional. I'm very much in favor of the ULURP, but I think it should be conditional on the approval to have the city have a plan for that resiting of Gateway Station before the council vote.
But the item still is approved.
Approved, yes, it's approved. Yes.
Can we go to bed now?
Yes, you can. Thank you so
Or
much.
can get some dinner.
It's to go to
Yes,
dinner.
get some dinner.
Yeah, get some food.
Thanks for
Yes.
hanging in there, everybody. I know it's super late, and yeah, really appreciate you staying.
Okay.
I ate through it, so we're good.
Good night, everyone.
Good night.
Thank you. Okay.
Be well.
Good night to you guys.